And hello, YouTube. This is Dark Tower Palaver. If you've listened to other videos before or watched other videos before here, you know this already. But we are a podcast for the Stephen King's The Dark Tower series, and we kind of expanded to other Stephen King stuff as well. But we are primarily a podcast. We've jumped into YouTube over the last couple of years, but just had nothing but visuals out with no camera. We just added cameras recently, so just started to realize that we weren't really giving an introduction to you guys that are on the YouTube side. So this is a podcast, and yeah. So as you get going, you'll see kind of what we have on the screen. You'll see us and hear us talking about in this episode of Book Club. So moving through book 3 of the Dark Tower series. So if you're here on the YouTube side, welcome. And then hello everyone that may be in the chat. Looks like a couple people. There we go. Cody and Mark. Hello, guys.
Make sure you got your chat to live, not.
Oh, I did that already.
Okay,
I did that. Yeah, I did that. See, I'm catching on to that already. Stupid top chat. Why the hell would you use that? Seems like a nonsense thing to have. But yeah.
Well, especially if you're the person running the show. Like, I don't understand how. Like, for me, I'm a viewer in the chat. You know.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You may only want the top chat, especially if you're watching. You know, someone who has thousands of people chatting at the same time.
Yeah.
But if you're the person running it, don't you want live? Like,
yeah.
I really couldn't see someone who's running a show wanting top chat.
Yeah, I don't know. Seems weird. Hello, Oswaldo. First time with us. Welcome. Good to have you. But yeah, we're here for looking at our calendar here. It's going to be our third to last book club of the year. We're already fast approaching the end of the year, which is crazy.
What the hell? Like, really?
Yep, this is next time we come together for a show after this will be October.
Jeez.
I mean, we already know we're in spooky season. That starts September 1st. That's just that's the law. So,
of course.
So let's go ahead and hit the intro real quick and get started on the actual get the podcast side started, and we'll jump right into book 3 here.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland, to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, The Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for book club for The Wastelands Part 10. And this is actually, we have a little bit of a change in this book club for anything that we've done before on book clubs, but we'll get to that after we get the intros. I want to hit that real quick. First of all, if you want to find us, you can find us any number of places, including Apple Podcasting. You can stream us on Spotify or Stitcher, and you can find us on basically any podcast service that's out there. If you want to also subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those services, that always helps the show, as well as it makes it to where you won't miss any new episodes. I think we generally have a pretty good, consistent release schedule. Of course, sometimes in the summer, things get a little bit helter-skelter because of vacations and whatnot. But normally we have a pretty consistent release schedule. But yeah, subscribing is definitely a good way to keep up with us. If you want to find our show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com. There isn't really show notes for this episode because it's a book club, and there's really not a lot we can do show notes-wise for a book club. We're just going through the book line by line. But check that out, though. If you are a new listener, you can find like our questions for new listeners. You can find the links to all of our stuff, all of our different avenues, things like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, our merchandise. There's all kinds of links there. So it's definitely a good little place to be like the hub of everything for Dark Tower Palaver. And then if you want to support the show, you can do that on patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We have a number of different levels over there. If you want to support us, you can do that over there. We have a bunch of fun little things like our Discord server where we're always chatting on, as well as hangouts on that we do monthly. So check out that over there. And then if you want to contact us, you can do that a number of ways that Peter can let you know.
Best way is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. And then like Ted mentioned earlier, this is our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Make sure to like it, ring the bell, and subscribe. Especially ringing the bell gives you the notifications for when we're going live. And then our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Our Instagram is Dark Tower Palaver, all one word, no spaces. And then we got our merchandise, which is, we got Tad's shirt. You can see my shirt, the best one. #Tad is terrible. You can get anything from these two logos.
That's slander there, that shirt.
No, it's the truth. You get anything from these two logos. Tad's got the normal Dark Tower Palaver, including a pillow, a sticker. You can get any different kind of stuff
The
there.
Dark Tower Palaver pillow that I've been talking about ordering for a while. Finally got it.
Finally got it.
I love that.
That's all available at tpublic.com/user/darktowerpalaver. So,
and they come in different sizes too. This is the tiniest one because I just want
really?
something, if I'm in my chair, I could put behind my head and whatever. But they have different sizes. But yes, I am very happy to have the little Dark Tower cushion.
Dark Tower Palaver pillow.
So yes, that's a lot of fun stuff though. But yeah, over at TeePublic. But yeah, so we are also, just to hit the calendar stuff. We have this episode. I think this is our last one. I can't say it's our last one because we've jumbled the tail end of the year here too because of our year-end bash. So we have this episode, and then in October we have 2 roundtables, and then we have a book club and roundtable in November. And then a book club and roundtable in December, in that order. And the last one there is on the 18th of December, which will be our year-end bash. If you've been with us for any period of time, you probably know what that entails. So that should be a lot of fun. So this will be our third to last book club for 2021. Then we'll be moving into 2022.
So basically just one in November and one in December?
Yep. So,
okay.
So October we have both roundtables, and then because we normally do 2 roundtables and a book club, 2 roundtables and a book club, but we shuffle them if we have to. And the way that we would have done if we kept that pattern, we would have had a book club as our last episode, and that just never seems to be what we want to do. We want to have the year-end bash to kind of blow out the year in style. So we wanted to shift that around. So it kind of goes every other there from November to December, every other episode. So that's what we got coming down the pike. And then here, as we get closer, we'll get it ironed out what we'll be doing for shows for 2022, kind of when we start. We find that with the every other week release schedule, we can pick one week that puts it to where we kind of miss a lot of the holidays and stuff. So once we get that ironed out, we'll kind of let you know when 2022 will be launching. So yeah, let's jump on over to it though. And we are in the middle of book 3 of the Dark Tower series, The Wastelands. And within that, the way it's structured, there's 2 big books, each of them having a number of really big 3 big chapters. And then each of those 3 big chapters have a shitload of subchapters. Mm-hmm. And so we are currently in, let's see, oops, I accidentally just got to the wrong spot here. So we are in chapter 3 of book 1, which is Door and Demon. So let's go ahead and let me find the spot now because I just lost it. But we're in subchapter 11.
Yeah.
Where we left off is Eddie is now going back to carving the key, but he's very nervous about it. And of course, he's trading it off with Roland, who is quieting the voices as Jake was when holding the key. And that's kind of where we left off is Eddie kind of having the self-doubt about not fucking this up, basically, and then falling asleep and dreaming about Jake because in his dream, he is back to being a kid, and he is talking to Jake in New York City. Mm-hmm. So that is what is going on when we left off, and then jumping off here into subchapter 11. So, Peter, you want to go ahead and start off here?
So Jake's leaving his apartment building. Remember, Jake just got his father's gun, some sunglasses, some books, and
wrote a goodbye note,
and he's off. He's leaving. He's gonna go find the boy from his dreams, which we know is Eddie. Starting off here, he considered taking the train out to Brooklyn right away, then decided it was a bad idea. A kid out of school was apt to attract more attention in the hinterlands than in the heart of a big city, and if he really had to search for this place and the boy he was supposed to meet there, he was cooked already. So already getting into Jake's mind about, okay, how am I going to handle this? I got to get out to Brooklyn. I got to find this kid. He has nothing basically to go on.
So did you ever cut class before?
Oh, yeah.
I brought you to the dark side and,
Oh, before high school?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, because it's a lot tougher when you're younger. Like when we're in high school,
Get in the car and go.
Yeah, you get in the car and like you got that camouflage of a car. But when you're in junior high, that's tough because you stick out walking down the street as a kid, and cops and whoever else can see that, hey, there's a kid that should probably be in school. It's pretty nerve-wracking. So I can definitely feel where Jake's coming from here, and as well as the strategy of how to maybe best avoid attention whilst being this young and not being in school on a school day.
Yeah. I think the only time, I think I may have done it once in junior high, there was like some voluntary thing they were doing for the last period of the day.
Yeah.
And it's like, what if you're not going to do this, then you have to do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do either of those. So I just was like, I'll just walk home. Like, I lived within walking distance of the school.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, unlike for you, because I know what junior high you went to, and I can picture it in my head.
Yeah.
That's
just
nothing.
Just got torn down, as a matter of fact.
Oh, did it really? I need to drive past there.
Yeah,
and see
they had a huge crack in the building when we had our earthquake last year.
Oh, yeah.
And they felt that it was probably going to. I mean, there were some hopes that they may be able to like repair what was damaged, but they finally decided that it's just not worth it. So
It's time to take it down.
Yep, tore it down.
But my school had a canal running next to it, and that canal runs right by my neighborhood.
Oh, okay. Well,
So
canal,
what I did
that
is-
sounds fun. A canal.
Oh yeah, I know, right? with bridges. Like there's the part where the road would go over. There was like the bridge underneath it. You'd be walking past and be like, what's down there? But no, that's what I did. Is I snuck out of school. I walked. The only nerve-wracking part was getting down to the canal. Once you got down to the canal, you're fine. You're scot-free. There's no cops. There's no roads. There's no people.
Yeah.
You just walk along the canal, and I got home about the time the school got out.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of like trudged along a little bit, and then my
Yeah.
mom's like, "What are you doing home?" I was like, "Oh, we did this volunteer thing, and they let us go 20 minutes early, so I just rushed home." I think that's the only time I skipped school before high school. Because you're right. In high school, we did it all the time.
Yeah, definitely. What was it, senior year? We didn't go to a single assembly?
No.
Anytime there's an assembly, we
Bounce. We would have got food.
out the side door and out to get food.
We
Yeah.
had Wendy's, we had Arby's, we had D's just down the street, a little family restaurant.
It's like we said with our top 10 king kids. You can't count high school, man. That's a different kind of kid. That's a whole different kind of life,
Yep.
Like once you hit that certain age. So it's just a lot easier and you're more independent and stuff. But in fact, we actually cut school to go see Lord of the Rings.
Return of the King.
To go stand in line for that as well.
Because that was before assigned seating.
Yeah.
So it was first come, first serve, because that was around the time that we were doing like the Star Wars. The prequels were coming out.
Yeah.
We did
But those were in the summer.
Those were in the
always,
summer, and Lord of the Rings came out in November. So
Yeah.
we cut school on a Friday, I think it was.
Whatever day.
We cut school. Like our teacher called us out, like, "You're going to Lord of the Rings," and we're like, you went to Lord of the Rings, and we're like, "Yep, yeah, we sure did." And we went and saw Return of the King. And then I think one of them was like, "Don't tell me, I want to see it."
Yeah. Yeah. So I do love Jake's plotting out here, because yes, it definitely feels true to me as one that did cut class around this age. I mean, I think Jake's technically is he 6th grade?
He's 11, so 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah, somewhere in there. So a couple years later for me, but yes, still not old enough to have a car and stuff. And there was always a danger as you were, crossing streets and that kind of thing. Because if a cop just so happened to be going by, you were just screwed. So I could definitely feel where Jake's coming from here. All right, so then moving on here a little bit further down. It says, because he's walking and it's hot and everything, he sees the museum here. It says a group of school-age children are lining up for a tour. Public school, Jake was almost sure. They were dressed as casually as he was. No blazers from Paul Stewart, no ties, no jumpers, no simple little skirts that cost $125 at places like Miss So Pretty or Tweenity. This crowd was Kmart all the way. On impulse, Jake stood at the end of the line and followed them into the museum. I gotta love the Kmart call out though. Mm-hmm. That's one that's now becoming
it's extinct.
Yeah, it's
gone.
That probably the next generation of people reading that probably won't even have any understanding of what Kmart is.
It's funny driving past all the old Kmart locations that haven't been torn down. A bunch of them have been, but
yeah.
I drove past one of the ones that's over by my place that's still empty, and I'm like, huh. That
Yeah, still a
that-
graveyard.
Yeah, it's a graveyard. Like, it's been empty for years.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it goes on here, says the tour took an hour and 15 minutes. Jake enjoyed it. The museum was quiet, and even better, it was air conditioned, and the pictures were nice. He was particularly fascinated by a small group of Frederick Remington's Old West paintings and a large picture by Thomas Hart Benton that showed a steam locomotive charging across the Great Plains toward Chicago, while beefy farmers in bib overalls and straw hats stood in their fields and watched. He wasn't noticed by either of the teachers with the groups until the very end. Then a pretty black woman in a severe blue suit tapped him on the shoulder and asked who he was. Now, this is the first time ever that I've actually looked up Thomas Hart Benton just to see,
Oh, okay.
if is King referencing something in particular. And the way he describes it here, no. But this artist does indeed do a lot of paintings from kind of the Old West era, and he has a very distinct style. And so I grabbed a couple images here. I'll throw them up on the screen of ones I found that were train oriented, but none of them match kind of what King is describing here. So King is probably either inventing whole cloth, or maybe he had seen some of these that I'm showing on the screen here, and he's just kind of misremembered because, of course, when King's writing this, there's no such thing as Google. It's probably just something that he may have seen in a book at one point in college or high school and just misremembered and thought that it whatever. But so there's the style that Jake would probably be seeing, though, from said artist here. And then, Jake getting approached by a teacher here, which he should have seen coming. If you're going into a museum, go in with the group, but then you need to break away.
You need to break away.
Yeah, and stay away from the group altogether, because teacher's going to notice, whereas a person working at the place, probably not. You're just a kid that wandered away from their class or whatever. But teacher, they probably have 20 something kids that they've got, they know who they all are. Mm-hmm. So suddenly you have some strange one there, you're going to question them. So
who's that kid? I've never seen him before.
But I don't think that poor Jake here is very experienced in the ways of deception and subterfuge. I think he's a little bit of a novice here when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Also, you got to chalk it up to the fact that he got a little bit distracted here by pictures of Old West paintings. Why? I wonder why he found those fascinating.
And I didn't pull those up, but I feel like we all kind of know what's going on there. Obviously, Old West paintings,
wagons, and
definitely feeling the world that he's trying to get back to. Certainly, that definitely makes sense. But I do love this though. Again, because I love Jake noticing the kids, and also he's good, even though he doesn't seem like he's very good at this overall. He's kind of working his way through it. Mm-hmm. But I love that he's able to spot them that they, this is a class, but that they're a public school, which means that then he can blend into. Because if it was a school more like his, he would not blend in because he's just in normal clothes.
Yeah.
Nor if he had left school that very day, he would have his school uniforms on and he would have blended in. So I just love how he's kind of I don't know, it feels gunslingerish to be able to kind of figure out these kids are from public school. I could fit in with that, or maybe just to get by, maybe guards that might be trying to stop people at the door or something. I don't know. So that's definitely good though. And then what do you got next here?
Jake hadn't seen her coming, talking about the teacher, and for a moment his mind froze. Without thinking about what he was doing, he reached into his pocket and closed his hand around the silver key. His mind cleared immediately, and he felt calm again. My group is upstairs, he said, smiling guiltily. We're supposed to be looking at a bunch of modern art, but I like the stuff down here a lot better, because they're real pictures. So I sort of, snuck away, the teacher suggested. The corners of her lips twitched in a suppressed smile. Well, I'd rather think of it as French leave. These words simply popped out of his mouth. The students now staring at Jake only looked puzzled. But this time the teacher actually laughed. Either you don't know or have forgotten, she said, but the French Foreign Legion, they used to shoot deserters. I suggest you rejoin your class at once, young man.
Oh, man.
Nothing like a little gallows humor there.
Yeah.
From a teacher to a kid.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I do love, we're getting more from the key here. So the key silenced voices for him, but now it seems like it's actually giving him, I don't know, the ability to kind of think on the fly a little bit.
A little clarity.
Yeah, it seems like
he's he doesn't know what his mind froze, and without thinking about what he was doing, he reached into his pocket and closed his hand around the silver keys. So
and that's what
he just kind of freezes, oh God.
Yeah, like, deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
So I love that because it's actually giving us a little bit more of what maybe the key is capable of, and of course the key that he found in the vacant lot. So yeah, that's cool. We also know that the twinner of this key on the other side is helping Roland with the voices. But I remember being kind of excited by this the first time through because I go, ooh, we have new.
Right.
Something new here with this key. It's not just a voice silencer. It's also something that can make you think a little bit quicker. So that's good. And then of course, she goes on here and says, "What school is it?" Marquee Academy, Jake said. And this also just popped out. He went upstairs listening to the disembodied echoes of footfalls and low voices in the great space of the rotunda and wondering why he had said that. He had never heard of a place called Marquee Academy in his life. And of course, from our perspective, in fact, in the last sentence of subchapter 10, which is last time, we see Eddie has referred to Marquee Avenue, and the playground is where they were at in the dream. So I don't think Jake knows that, but Eddie certainly knew that was the Marquee Avenue playground. So the fact that Jake's comes up with that on the fly certainly seems almost supernatural because he wouldn't have known that it was Marquee Avenue playground that they were on. And he does, like it's saying here, he has no idea where it came from. But certainly as a reader, we're able to just flip the page back a couple pages there and go, oh, wait a minute. Eddie just mentioned Marquee Avenue, and now he's saying he's from Marquee Academy. So maybe some supernatural stuff going on here
something's up.
Yeah, to kind of give him a little bit of because he's not stumbling and bumbling. That's certainly one way to give yourself away when being questioned by the authorities. Even if an authority is a teacher, I think if nothing, teachers are probably good at sussing out.
Oh yeah.
Deception,
They get lied to every single day, right?
Yeah, no kidding. So the fact that he's able to, pull it so quickly and stuff definitely helps him out here.
Yeah.
And like I said, I love that because just it being a bridge, again, he doesn't have any understanding of Marquee Avenue, but Eddie did and mentioned it. I think has mentioned it a couple times now. From our perspective, we've seen Eddie mentioning it or in his head or out loud. And then so for him to say that, I just love it because it's kind of those we're seeing things crisscross here. We mentioned it last time how so far King had been keeping it clear subchapter we weren't jumping quickly back and forth between the two, and then last time for the first time ever we were in one subchapter and we flipped from Jake's side to Roland's side in the same subchapter, and that's never happened before. So it just feels like things are starting to kind of crisscross a little bit, and it feels like it's coming together.
It's almost like it's slowly working, and then you start getting more and more and more and more.
Yeah, and it's cool because some of it's in the story, but some of it's just the structure of the story. So I think some of this is fun to look at because it's literally just King. He's built a structure now that we understand, and now he's subverting it, which is then in a way telling us subconsciously that something's changing here. We're no longer separating Roland and Jake, and those two sides anyway, in different subchapters. So now they're crossing over, and then you got these weird little small things that are popping over from one side to the other, and it's just
they're sprinkling in across both sides.
It's kind of cool to see, and definitely makes you feel like we're maybe getting closer to some kind of crossing over all in a large way. So let's jump over to subchapter 12 then.
Right off the bat, he waited a while in the upstairs lobby, then noticed a guard looking at him with growing curiosity and decided it wouldn't be wise to wait any longer. He would just have to hope the class he had joined briefly was gone. He looked at his wristwatch, put an expression on his face that he hoped looked like, gosh, look how late it's getting, and trotted back downstairs. The class and the pretty black teacher who had laughed at the idea of French leave was gone, and Jake decided it might be a good idea to get gone himself. He would walk a while longer, slowly, in deference to the heat, and catch a subway.
Yeah, and again, love it, because he's just so, I don't know, he's being tactical about it, but he's certainly, he certainly feels like he's just making it up as he goes along here. Again, he doesn't feel like a polished pro here. I would definitely say that he's not one that has done this a lot, just based on what we're seeing.
No, we know that because with the Piper School, that's definitely something that he.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what happened when he had one time skipping school.
Yeah.
The 2 different teachers reached out to his parents directly.
Yeah.
And one came by and left a note.
Yeah. It's like us. I think it was like right when we were like in high school when the school started implementing those automated systems. It would call your parents and say your student has missed a class.
It was so stupid of them to do that because they didn't realize that. The best part was, so what Tad's talking about is that if you were marked absent from a class or marked absent for the full day, they had an automated system that would call your home phone number. This was right around the time the cell phones were slowly starting to take off.
Yeah.
Like, I think you had a cell phone our junior year, and I got one you had one our sophomore year, and I got one our junior year.
Yeah.
And so it was home phone still. And they would call, and it would just be like, your student, Tad Winter, was absent for 1 or more classes.
Yeah.
Press 1 to acknowledge.
Yeah.
And you just push 1, and it'd be like, okay, they know that he was absent.
Yeah.
And everything.
But they always called at the same time.
But they called at, like...
It's automated.
School got out at, like, 2:15. They called at, like, 3 o'clock. So it's like, okay, we skipped class today. I got to be home at 2:55, be near the door, be near the phone, getting a snack in the kitchen. I got it, answer it and push 1 and hang up. You don't even have to listen to the full message. And it's like, who is that? Telemarketer.
Yeah.
Wrong number. I used to do that all the time. I don't think my parents ever got... The other thing is that my parents worked, so my mom worked graveyards, and my dad
she was
worked...
asleep.
So she was asleep. And then my dad worked days and didn't get off until 5. So I didn't even have to be home right away. I just come home and just deleted off the answering machine.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh man!
I really hope my mom never hears that story.
Now, I bet you though they probably have things that'll like email the parents or text the parents and stuff like that.
I get an email every single day for report on whether or not my daughter is present in class or not.
Yeah.
I mean, she's in elementary school, but legit, like, I get one every single day.
I just figured the evolution of it, right? Like, it's this is just like our teachers are first just getting that rough, like, role was like on the computer and like I was like feeding into some database or whatever. But yeah, I figured that's evolved in some way. But of course, Jake doesn't have to worry about that. But, I guess like, the one teacher, he was in their class and then he left and didn't come back. So that's probably it. But then the other one noticed how he was acting.
He saw him that morning before the assembly, right?
Yeah. So that's not even as much that he was like not in class, but the fact of how he was acting. The one teacher came because of that. The other one came because you left my class, didn't come back. And like, yeah.
Well, the one teacher, the one that he left also had his English essay.
Yeah.
So he brought the essay, or she? I can't remember. There's one. I think there's one man and one woman.
Yeah.
One was the French teacher and one was the English teacher. Yeah, the English teacher was a woman. She brought the English essay, and that's how he found out that he got an A+.
Yeah.
And that she was thinking about possibly publishing his essay that he was so worried about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely wouldn't be easy for him with the way that school seems to be running.
Yeah.
Okay, then a little bit further down here, it says a cop came walking towards him, so he is stopped, and then
he's getting a dog.
He gets a hot dog, and I love it. It's knee high, also that he grabs. Reminds me of Radar from MASH. Always gets the grape knee highs. Yep. So anytime I see knee high, I don't even know if I've ever seen one in real life, but I know the reference. Like me, I think like orange or grape crush. Not knee high. But
I had to look it up when we were doing our research for this week. I was like,
oh really?
What the hell is that? And the thing is that since we're using the Kindle app, you can click on a word and it does like the definition.
Yeah.
If you click on knee, there's nothing.
On knee high. Oh yeah, knee high. Because it's a brand, ultimately. Knee high is a brand. But yeah, I only know it because like Radar, it's a huge reference in MASH throughout the series. Radar always drinks grape knee highs and all the other guys are drinking alcohol. So yeah, he stops, grabs a hot dog and that, and then the note here is a cop came walking toward him, twirling his nightstick in a complex series of maneuvers. He seemed to be paying attention to nothing but this. But when he came abreast of Jake, he abruptly shoved his stick into the loop and turned to him. "Say hey, big guy," he said. "No school today?" And that is just the worst. That's the worst. It says Jake had been wolfing his sausage, but the last bite abruptly stuck in his throat. This was a lousy piece of luck, if luck was all it was. They were in Times Square, sleaze capital of America. There were pushers, junkies, whores, and chicken chasers everywhere, but this cop was ignoring all of them in favor of him. Now, here's another thing, kind of like the Kmart reference earlier. I don't think a lot of people, if they're younger, understand what New York or the Times Square looked like in the 1970s or 1980s.
Oh yeah.
Like, have you seen any pictures and stuff? Like, legit, like, it's like the red light district. Like,
Oh, it was bad.
porn theaters, peep shows. Like, you can Google it and stuff. Like, now it's like almost Disneylandish. Like, it's all just
very commercial.
Yeah, it's very commercial. It's just a bunch of ads and like very overpriced restaurants. You know, in some cases, shit you would eat anywhere else. Like, I think there may be like a McDonald's in Times Square, but it's like, I'm sure you're paying more because it's in Times Square. But it's like, it's just, it looks like a food court almost of a mall now.
It's even changed a little bit over the years, because like when I went to New York in 2001 with the Scouts,
yeah,
it was I don't think we ever really got like close to Times Square, but even like our bus driver who was from New York was like, there's no reason to go.
Yeah.
And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. And it was fine then. I think they really pushed hard to clean it up in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
It's really when they tried hard to like clean it up, make it a presentable place for, it's a tourist attraction. So like make it for tourists and not for like the scummiest of scum that would generally be. Cause like, yeah, you could look up some pictures. Now I did, just cause like I had memories of what I was thinking Times Square from like a different era, but I couldn't remember if it was like the 60s or 70s. Cause I know we're with Jake here, we're 1977. So we're definitely in the late 70s. So I wasn't sure. And I looked it up just to be sure. And yeah, it looked like from the 70s to the early 80s. It was just bad. You could find pictures of it. And yeah, it's just like peep shows, porn theaters, just every kind of smut you can imagine. Like it's like almost a dirtier version of the Strip in terms of, a lot of sexuality,
that's saying something to take the Strip.
A lot of depravity, but even the Strip's very commercialized and stuff nowadays. There's, you've got like the ladies that are out there, and maybe some cards that are being handed out and stuff. But like,
there's the M&M store.
Yeah, but overall you got stuff like that. But like,
I just googled 1970s Times Square, and the very first picture, the zoo, adult activity, swingers club, no escort needed. that's on a sign that's. Dude, I've seen these. This is what Vegas used to has nowadays. This is on the back of a pickup truck, just like a flatbed, just driving around and everything. That's crazy.
Robert brings up a good point. The movie Taxi Driver showed how Times Square was in that time. That's true.
Oh, that's a great one.
That's it. There's a good place to see it, like the film version of it. But yeah, I just think that's something that might get lost in time, because I just don't think Times Square.
I forgot.
If you're a
that.
younger person, I don't think it registers to you in the same way that it does for what King was writing. When King was writing this, like it was maybe in the time when they were actually starting to try to clean it up, but it was probably a work in progress. Like, certainly when he was writing this, especially because King writing in 91 now, I'm sorry. So actually it probably was cleaned up by the time King wrote this, but he understood that he's right. But he's writing it in the perspective of this was in 1977. So it would have been a much different look. But yeah, I just think that's one of those things that like, cause I was talking to somebody recently about Reno, because like there's a lot of older stuff you watch. In fact, MASH, again, another MASH reference, where Reno is like alluded to, and it's like just illusions. They don't explain it. And like I've asked people before that are more our age or younger, it's like, do you understand like what's the significance of Reno? And most people don't. So it's like there's like this whole like wave of jokes from this era of like television stuff that like are going to get lost in time, because ultimately what it was is Reno was one of the only places you can go and live there for a month and they would grant you a divorce back in the day. So if you
11/22/63.
So yeah.
The teacher, she's trying to get a divorce from her husband. She ends up going and waitressing in Reno.
Yeah, because they would let you live there a month, and that would establish residency, and then they would grant you a divorce. And most of the other places in the country you wouldn't. They would just tell you no, like unless like especially a woman couldn't get one. Like if the man said no, then it wasn't going to happen. So it was like, but it's one of those things that like if you assume that everyone gets what that reference is, but then time changes that. Now like people watch it and they're just like, okay, like it goes by them and they don't understand. And I think it's the same thing here. Is it's like Times Square, like it's been so kind of clean for 20 years now that like most people our age or younger, like they're not going to know like what Jake's actually seeing right here. Well, we have an image in our mind of like, oh, what we probably saw in a Spider-Man movie or something.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Was it Amazing Spider-Man 2 where they have the fight at Times Square? I was going to say Times Square's now like pedestrian traffic. Like you can't even really like drive through it, right?
I'm not
sure. I think the new Spider-Man game, not the Miles Morales one, but the first Spider-Man game.
Yeah.
There's a huge part in Times Square where you have to like fix the electronic billboards.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's like whole sections where it's just pedestrian. I mean, that's a video game.
Yeah.
But I think that's accurate, isn't it?
I know there's a lot of big cities that are doing that now, and like the heart of like the cities is they're cutting off areas to where it's just you can't drive anymore.
We even have that here in
it's 100% for like pedestrians and bikes and stuff, but no more cars because it's just like they've created like this small little area, like a couple city blocks where it's just like you just walk. Like there's no
it's
driving.
like that. We have that down in downtown Salt Lake in a couple places. You got like the Gateway Mall, which is just a walking outdoor mall, and then there's the City Creek and the LDS Temple and all the area that they have around that. That's just like it used to be where you could drive through that. Now they have it cordoned off, and it's like blocks of it.
Yeah.
And I think Times Square is the same. The other one that I think of with like what you're talking about of why it's changed with like what it used to be. Dude, I bet you money my daughter's not going to know really what Vegas means when it says Sin City. Vegas has changed. It has kind of a wholesome image now.
They've moved away from it.
They have some
like it's back to being mostly for adults. Like they've plowed a lot of the stuff that was like for kids and for families. Like,
oh really?
It's back to just. I mean, it's corporate as all hell, but like it's not like when I was a kid when you go see the pirate ships and like that kind of stuff. That stuff's all gone.
It just doesn't feel as like. I remember when we were kids that Sin City, the Las Vegas, had that reputation from the 70s and 80s where it was bad.
Yeah.
You don't take your family there. But I remember that, yes, they were doing like the family thing. And even, I mean, I've vacationed in Vegas. I never had before.
Yeah.
I vacationed in Vegas in the last decade twice. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of fun. Like this could be something that we could do. I mean, obviously, casinos and the gambling and everything like that. Like you said, there's still large parts of it that are very adult.
Yeah.
And not even getting into the real adult stuff. But
and
there's
love
all kinds of stuff.
What I love is indoor smoking.
Oh,
reminds me of my childhood. Because here in Utah, it's just,
no, it's nationwide now.
No, there's still some state, like, because there's even like hotels, like certain places you go, hotels have smoking and non-smoking, but other places like Utah, there's no such thing as a smoking room. Florida, there isn't anymore, but there is in Nevada. I'm trying to remember where else I've been, like in the last little bit, where they'll still ask it. It's like, wait, really? You guys still have smoking hotels?
Wow.
Like, okay, it's not nationwide, but yeah, the whole Clean Air Act is in a lot of places. But when I go to Vegas and go into a casino, you can smell the tobacco in the air. I love the spirit of it. Okay, so a little bit of tangent there, but then as we go down here, so again, Jake's kind of perplexed, like there's a lot going on that the cop should be paying attention to, but he's not. So the cop's asking him, he kind of gives him his weak little excuse about being finals week and only had one test and whatever. And then I think you got your note here.
Yeah, the cop asked him to see some ID. Jake's heart sank. Had his mother and father already called the cops? He supposed that after yesterday's adventure that was pretty likely. Under ordinary circumstances, the NYPD wouldn't take much notice of another missing kid, especially one that had been gone only half a day. But his father was a big deal at the network, and I like that the network, a network part is capitalized. Like it's the name of it is the network.
Yeah.
And he prided himself on the number of strings he could pull. Jake doubted if the cop had his picture, but he might very well have his name.
Which, that's a whole thing here because of what he did the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah, his parents potentially, I mean, it's actually pretty likely that his parents have his name out there.
Oh, yeah.
To be on the lookout for him. So,
and this is something that I wanted to highlight. You've kind of brought it up already with stuff that has changed and everything. My daughter reading The Dark Tower is going to be like, how the heck can this kid get away with this? In this day and age with like Amber Alerts and the technology that we have, you could not get away with this.
Well, and also even just like the idea of, there was that whole like misnomer that you had to wait however long before you could
48 hours before you could report someone missing.
Missing persons, like that shit doesn't fly anymore. And like
no.
But yeah, this is certainly a different time, and he probably hasn't been gone that long yet. So
do you know where that came from?
No, I mean it's something that's been said for decades, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only in the last, I think, probably since the turn of the century that I've really heard that challenged. Where you actually see it like kind of called out as like, no, that's not true. Like, call the cops immediately if someone's missing. You know, obviously it's a difference when it's a kid too versus like an adult that might just.
I think that's the big one that I've actually seen, like police departments and people sharing posts from police departments on social media where it's like, if your child is missing, don't wait to call. Like call us.
Yeah.
There is no 24-hour or 48-hour wait time. Call us.
Yeah.
We that doesn't exist. That never has existed.
Yeah, especially because don't they say that the first 48 hours is the most crucial to if someone's going to be found dead or alive? Is what happens in the first 48 hours of them going missing.
I think it's 48 hours for a missing person versus also there's one that I've heard where it's most murders are solved within 72 hours.
But I've heard that within the first 48, it's the most crucial to seeing the person.
For a missing person.
Yeah, like if you get them within the first 48 or get on the trail, like you might be okay. But like once you're past that, like like the odds flip exponentially the other way, where it's like you probably are never going to see the person again at that point.
Yeah.
So,
which is why you'll see these posts about people who have been missing for 3-6 months, and I'm just like, oh,
yeah, that's rough.
That's rough.
It's like, well, Elizabeth Smart was the big one here,
She went missing, and
she was gone for a couple of years.
2 years, right?
Yeah, and I remember when they found her, I'm like, oh, they found her dead, right? No, she's alive. I'm like, wait, what?
Well, I know that was one of the most shocking things.
I
think
I think I was in high school, but yeah, I remember that being the one that really shocked me because she was still alive.
Yeah,
because it had been like 2 years or something crazy. But then it goes on here. It says, well, Jake said reluctantly, I've got my student discount card from Midworld Lanes, but that's about all. Midworld Lanes, never heard of it. Where is that? Queens? And I'll just pause the note there to just say again, Midworld. Again, wires are crossing here. Things are. King is mushing things together to where suddenly we're seeing things that we understand from Roland's world and Jake's world, and now he just has a Freudian slip. And the thing is, does he even understand what Midworld is, or is that another kind of thing that he shouldn't know? You know what I mean?
Doesn't Roland and him talk about Midworld in The Gunslinger?
Do they? I don't remember.
I think they might have.
Okay. Midtown, I mean, Jake thought, God, this was going north instead of south and fast. On 33rd, that'll do fine. The cop held out his hand. So, definitely not going well. This is like, I feel like this is like movies you see too, where it's like, what a character should probably say, and they just say the wrong thing at every turn,
right.
Or it goes the wrong way. Like if it can go left or right and you want it to go left, it always goes right. Like this feels like that, it's just for poor Jake. You're just like, oh man, this kid is not catching a break, man.
Yeah.
First teachers, now cops, like, you almost want to say it can't get any worse from here, but with so far the way King has treated this poor kid, I wouldn't risk saying that even. But yeah, I remember just like, oh my God, this poor kid. But yeah, I do love the crossing there where he says Midworld Lanes.
Yeah.
And then because again, and you could be right, maybe it is mentioned in the first book, but I don't recall. I feel like this might be kind of like the earlier when he gave the name of the school, and it's not really something that he had the consciousness of. It just kind of came.
It very well could have been. I don't think that. I imagine that they talked. I mean, they walked for weeks together.
Yeah.
I imagine that it came up at some point.
Yeah. What do you got next?
So the cop's still asking him for his ID, and Jake is a bystander chirps in, and then Jake asks, "Why don't you ask him for some ID?" Jake asked, "Because right now I'm asking you. Snap it up, son." The cop either had his name or had sensed something wrong about him, which wasn't so surprising, maybe since he was the only white in the area who wasn't obviously trolling. Either way, it came to the same. Sitting down here to eat his lunch had been dumb, but his feet had hurt and he'd been hungry, damn it. Hungry. You're not going to stop me, Jake thought. I can't let you stop me. There's someone I'm supposed to meet this afternoon in Brooklyn, and I'm going to be there. So you're going to see like a little internal monologue from Jake, like, nope,
yeah,
not stopping me.
And for the one thing, I love his moxie here, where he's like, why don't you ask him for some ID? Like,
yeah.
That doesn't sound like Jake.
No.
To challenge an authority figure like this, and in such like it just doesn't feel like him at all. Like I feel like we know him as a character by this point, and that does not feel like him. In the slightest. So I remember that being one that really like made me kind of raise an eyebrow, like, oh, okay. And then that last little bit there, where you have the internal monologue kind of with him, where he's quote unquote speaking to the cop in his mind, and it makes me wonder, like, what does he mean here? What's Jake willing to do at this point? to make this meeting. And ultimately, as a reader, of course, you're on the edge of your seat because you're just like, you understand, like he's got to get to this. They've already established the fact that in his last dream, Eddie told him, meet me at this place at this time, whatever, and follow us or whatever. So we kind of know, like, in a way, you've got the clock is ticking now. Like you have a moment in time that you have to be in a specific place. So any delay or getting brought into the station by a cop is going to completely kill everything.
Well, you got to remember, he doesn't know the specific place.
No. Yeah, but
he knows
the
Brooklyn.
Yeah, he knows the general.
But that's not a general area. Even that's a broad area to be like.
Yeah.
So that's why he hasn't really had like a destination.
Yeah, but he has a time though, and then that's why the clock is ticking. That's why I remember being stressed as all hell at this point because it's like, dude, if he gets fucking brought in right now, like this reminds me of like the third door in the last book with Roland.
Yeah.
Like you just kept thinking like, dude, this is going absolutely wrong. Like this is fucked up. Like how is this going to resolve it? And you got fucking nervous as hell with the whole Jack Mort stuff and the gun store and the cops, and there's just so much going on where you're just like, how is this going to resolve? This feels the same way. It's like, dude, he can't get delayed. Like he needs to be free to be able to move down to Brooklyn to hopefully find Eddie, because of course you're right, he doesn't have an actual location.
Yeah.
So this is about as bad as it can get to start getting talked to by a cop.
I think the only thing that could have been worse is if he'd sit down to eat his hot dog and his dad walked up to the hot dog stand. That could have been like the only worst scenario.
Like the old Ferris Bueller. When they're in the car, looks over and his dad's there, and then he looks back over and they duck down.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That's pretty much that, or maybe like a teacher or something that maybe out of class for some reason, running into someone that actually knew him.
Yeah.
That parents would probably be the worst, but this certainly isn't going well.
Greta Shaw on her day off.
Yeah, there's some things that could happen, but a cop, that's pretty bad. Because again,
you got to question Jake here because he's not wrong. It was wrong to stop there and eat the hot dog, but I get why he said earlier, downtown is going to be better to get lost in the crowd.
Yeah,
but at the same time, there's different kinds of crowds. Like, did you have to go to Times Square? Yeah. Also, that's something else to consider. A kid's going to stick out like a sore thumb there.
Yeah,
like you were mentioning, like.
This isn't today's Times Square.
Today's Times Square would be perfect.
Yeah, he could just go to like the Starbucks that's there, and he'd blend in fine.
Exactly. Go sit in the McDonald's for an hour, munching on some nuggies and stuff.
Yeah,
and everything.
Exactly. But now this is like a kid on his own on the Strip.
Exactly. That's weird. Yeah. That's where you stick out. Don't do that.
Yeah. Definitely some poor choices being made by little Jake here. Then it goes down a little bit further.
I blame Stephen King for it. It's his fault. He just likes shitting on the kid.
He's abused the fuck out of this kid up to this point. Let's be honest here. And it says instead of reaching for his wallet, he reached into his front pocket and brought out the key. He held it up to the policeman. The late morning sunshine bounced little coins of reflected light onto the man's cheek and forehead. His eyes widened. "Hey," he breathed. "What do you got there, kid?" He reached for it, and Jake pulled the key back a little. The reflective circles of light danced hypnotically on the cop's face. You don't need to take it," Jake said. "You could read my name without doing that, can't you?" "Yeah," or "Yes, sure." So another ability, it seems, with this key is it seems like it's hypnotizing the cop here,
right?
Which that's a handy little key.
Right.
that is a handy little key here. It seems like it's basically putting the cop under his power, which is very interesting. Like I mentioned earlier, where we already saw like it basically bring him some clarity. We saw it stopping the voices in his head, and now we see that it can control people in a weird way. So very handy indeed. And also, while I was reading there, it dawned on me, I forgot to say at the top of the show, we do have a change to this episode.
Oh, right. we completely glossed over that. Sorry.
Yeah, I completely spaced it because it's go through the announcements and we just get used to doing it the normal way.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we were changing for this episode, and we're going to be doing this with all the book clubs going forward, is because I also didn't even mention the whole spoilers thing, because we always tell you that these episodes we don't have spoilers. We're only talking about where we're at or before. So if you haven't finished the series, this is the place to be listening. Don't listen to our roundtables; those are very dangerous. But we actually decided what we're going to start doing is at the very tail end of these episodes, we're going to have a spoiler section where we can talk about the stuff that we covered in this episode and talk about talk about it freely without the being
the spoiler restriction.
Yeah, no spoiler restrictions, but we'll let you know. So if you are listening to this episode and you haven't finished the series, we'll give you very clear indication when that's coming, and we'll just basically tell you at that point you can turn the episode off, and we'll be done. You'll be done. But then if you've listened to the whole series, read the whole series, whatever, you can continue listening. That's something we want to add. I don't know. I always feel like I sometimes come up with good ideas, but just too late. I wish I would have thought of this, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
but
it's
well,
that's part of growing as a show, is that you develop new ideas and everything like that. I mean, we went from just doing recordings to being live. There's a process there. But the nice thing is with this is that we've already got notes for it.
Yeah.
Throughout this section that we're going over today, is that there are things that we want to talk about that would be spoiler.
Yeah.
And I know you had a couple, and I know I threw one on there. And it's going to be nice to be able, at the end of the episode, just take those gloves off and really go to town on this section that we just talked about.
Yeah. So we'll do that going forward. Of course, that leaves it to where a little bit of this book and then all the first two books don't really have that. But yeah, from this point forward, we'll be doing that just so that we can kind of talk about, while we're in this granular word by word, like going through these things, that we can talk about some of this stuff that may connect to the larger series without, because it just, we always had the idea of maybe keeping notes and then bringing them to the round tables, but that just hasn't really worked out. So
no, because the thing is that with the book clubs, the big thing with it is that it is taking us away from the news for a week.
Yeah.
It is taking us away from emails for a week. And so on top of that, I mean, we saw it, what was it, last time or the time before, where we're like, crap, what are we going to do the top 10 Stephen King kids? Like, with life happening and everything like that, it just gets to the point where it's like, okay, we gotta find time to be able to talk when we're this far down into the book.
Yeah.
We're so engrossed into it, where we're going basically almost line by line, section by section.
Yeah.
There are times where things will come up that's not going to come up on a round table.
Yeah, it never.
And that's where we want to have a spot to talk about them. And so that's where the spoiler section at the end of the book clubs is where it's going to be.
Yeah.
So fantastic idea, Ted. I'm looking forward to it today.
Yeah. So apologies I didn't get that up at the top of the show with the announcements, but we'll make sure that's part of the announcements going forward with roundtables or book clubs. I'm sorry, and it will be on this episode. So if you are someone that's listening that hasn't finished the series, again, don't worry, because I will give you a very good and clear warning that we're moving into that section.
Make a big spoiler thumbnail. Put it up next time.
I was thinking like a big alarm, like a red alert alarm or something. Not that I have one.
The klaxon alarm.
Yeah,
is that what they call it?
Yeah, something like that. Not that I have it on, so I can't promise anything because I don't have anything.
I could find
but yeah. So sorry about that. But yeah. Then let's move on here. Then to further on as we move into this section here. Then as we move on, there's some other people. One that I love, it says a young woman, probably not a librarian, judging by the green silk hot pants and see-through blouse she was wearing. So again, this is Times Square, the 70s. But I just love King's description there. But basically, Jake's attracting a crowd. Other people are kind of catching this hook of this key.
It
and
says,
they're getting what was one cop in that the black guy that told the cop to arrest Jake. Now it's spreading into more people. So
it says now Jake saw that 4 or 5 other people had stopped as well. So all were staring at the key. They were gathering, as people sometimes will, around a very good 3-card Monte dealer plying his trade on a street corner. You're doing a great job of being inconspicuous, he thought. Oh yeah, he glanced over the cop's shoulder and his eye caught the sign of on the far side of the street. Denby's Discount Drug, it said. My name's Tom Denby, he told the cop. It says so right here on my discount bowling card, right? Right, the cop breathed. He had lost all interest in Jake. He was only interested in the key. The little coins of reflected light bounced and spun on his face. And you're not looking for anybody named Tom Denby, are you? No, the cop said. Never heard of him. Now there were at least half a dozen people gathered around the cop, all of them staring with silent wonder at the silver key in Jake's hand. So, I can go, can I? Huh? Oh, sure. Go for your father's sake. And so that's wait a minute.
Yeah,
that's the cop saying that.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like,
again, King's
it's coming across.
King's crisscrossing stuff on us here. Yeah, but it feels like a Romero movie here. With this crowd growing and growing.
It just keeps getting bigger.
It feels like a Romero zombie movie. I guess I should clarify that because, of course, he does have other kinds of movies. But
he does?
Yeah, I mean, Creep Show, for instance.
Hey, no. No.
Good old George Romero.
No. No.
See, you're just like ruined now at this point. You know, Creep Show, I can't bring it up, and all you think about is the monkey.
Damn beast.
Oh, man. So, yeah, I do love the crowd here, and I love, again, the cop is just 100%, hypnotized. There's no better way to say it. Yeah, he is 100% under Jake's control, as well as now Jake's getting more attention drawn to him, which is probably not good. So let's go ahead and move further here. It says let's see. He stopped just once on the far side of the plaza and looked back. The small group of people around the place where he had been standing was coming slowly back to life. They looked around at each other with dazed expressions and then walked on. The cop glanced vacantly to his left, to his right, and then straight up at the sky as if trying to remember how he had gotten here and what he had been meaning to do. Jake had seen enough. It was time to find the subway station and get his ass over to Brooklyn before anything else weird could happen. That's probably a good call. Honestly, when it comes down to it, I kind of see where Jake's reasoning is, but I almost wonder in Brooklyn, you know, if you're going closer to like Co-op City and stuff, would it maybe be better to be a kid there because maybe people are cutting class more and it's less of a, I don't know, not that Jake would know that, but certainly seems like maybe there's some debate that can be had about whether Jake's having the has the appropriate strategy here or not.
Yeah.
But that's I feel like I remember being relieved that Jake's finally going that direction though, because it's like, okay, finally, that's where you should have been going already, kid. Like, So, and then sorry about that. While I was going there, I accidentally clicked the wrong button on my mouse, and it started going at like 3 times faster than I'm normally used to. So I'm just like, I can't.
Oh, you got one of those buttons too? I've done that before.
Yeah.
I get it. I think I have it on the like one of the faster settings, so I click it like once or twice, and it's like a turtle. It's like
it barely moves. But then if you go too fast, though, it's like moving like it's like a laser all over your screen. So while I was reading, I was also trying to like not move my mouse too much. It's always a challenge. We'll see. The one I've got at work, I have a button right there, but it's right near the scroller. But what it is if you click it, your scroll wheel's infinite, and it moves really fast and smooth. But then if you click it, it has kind of that draggy feel that most wheels have.
Yeah.
So I'm used to just clicking that at work now. It's like almost a fidget thing where it's just like changing my wheel from fast to slow. So I think I did that out of habit, and instead I changed the speed of my scroll thing here, which is, or not scroll, but my actual mouse. So but yeah, good Jake finally going the right direction. Get on the freaking subway, and I mean, dude, even ride the fucking subway for a cycle. You know, like that would be a better way to kill the day.
Ride it uptown, ride it downtown, then come back.
I mean, just of course, hindsight's 20/20. It's easy for us to say that here, but you know.
But there are cops that patrol the subway, and the subway, there's far less crowds in the middle of the day when people are already at work. So
yeah.
That's a place to stick out as well. I think the best thing that you could do is get over to Brooklyn as fast as possible because it's morning before. Yeah. And then find a place to hole up. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Find that Starbucks like you mentioned earlier with Times Square. Find a place like that that's going to let you hole up and stay there. Yeah. You know? Exactly. Also, the thing for me would be my anxiety is it's something I've heard people say recently. FOMO, fear of missing out. Yeah. I would have the FOMO, like Jake dawdling around downtown and everything like that. Okay, he's finally going to Brooklyn. What if he gets there? Again, we established this. He doesn't know where he's going. Yeah. What if he gets there and doesn't have enough time to figure it out? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That would be my thing. I'd be like immediately on a subway to get down there to start like fanning out and okay, Brooklyn's a big place. Let's see if I can figure out where the hell I'm going. Yeah, try to figure it out. Exactly. That would be me. But I'm one that I have to be early places because I was always taught that like if you're on time you're late. So me, I'm always like if I'm not like 10, 15 minutes early, like I am stressed all hell. I show up here and sometimes I'm sitting out in my car listening to Stephen King. Yeah. Like today I was here about half hour before we usually start. I was out there listening to Lizzie's story. Oh, okay. So I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's just easier that way. I don't know. Yeah. But then moving on to subchapter 13 here. What do you got? I'm just going to read the whole thing. At 1:45 that afternoon, he walked slowly up the steps of the subway station and stood on the corner of Castle and Brooklyn Avenues. See, that's what I'm talking about. 1:45. So he's getting there 1:45. He's supposed to be there at what, 3? I think is what the time was, if I remember right from the last time we recorded. Yeah. 3 o'clock he's supposed to be there. That is not enough time to search fucking Brooklyn.
No, I would have been there.
I would
have
have
been
been
there at noon.
Like I would have been there at like 10 in the morning. Like that's where I would. I'm like, nah, I'm not messing around.
Yeah, indeed. I definitely feel that.
Looking at the sandstone towers of Co-op City, he waited for that feeling of assurance and direction, the feeling that was like being able to remember forward in time to overtake him. It didn't come. Nothing came. He was just a kid standing on a hot Brooklyn street corner with his short shadow lying at his feet like a tired pet. Well, I'm here. Now what do I do? Jake discovered he didn't have the slightest idea. See, this is what I'm talking about. That's a huge fear for me. Is it's like, okay, well, I need you to go here and meet up with us, but you'll be able to find us when you get there. I hate when people give directions like that.
Yeah.
Or when you're meeting up with someone, it's like, hey, yeah, we'll find each other there. It's like, no, we're going to meet at this spot, this bench. Here's a picture of it from Google Maps. Here's the GPS coordinates so you can walk there. You know, I hate that.
Yeah.
I would never trust myself to be able to just go off of like intuition and feelings.
If you're going somewhere you've never been before, do you Google Map it and look at Street View and stuff? And
not always, but sometimes.
yeah, I usually do.
Like we did our vacation in August where we went up to Bear World, and we did an Airbnb where we're becoming Airbnb people instead of hotels. We're finding it's just a little bit more comfortable, and I did Google Street View to see the house and everything like that. Like, it's the white one on this side of the road and everything like that. Because sometimes the GPS is like, you have reached your destination. It's like, well, I'm supposed to be at 1,000, and that house is 800. So I'm going to say that it's still up a little way.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will, but for like businesses, no, they usually have signs. They advertise. I'm not worried about.
It depends on how unfamiliar I am. Like if I'm going out of town, like I'm Google mapping everything, so I have like a general idea, not only of just the street view, but also looking at the map and go, okay, well I'll be here, so I have to go like 30 blocks south or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have at least a little bit of a
You probably had that in Houston a little bit.
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah. When I went to Houston for work, I was just like looking around, figuring things out. Like I'd plotted out places that were probably good to try to eat and stuff, and knew how to get to them and stuff. Yeah, that's just how I am. I don't want to be like wandering around aimlessly. It's the worst.
There's times where I've done that where it's like, you know what? We're just going to go for a drive. We're going to walk. We're going to explore a little bit.
Yeah.
We're not going to plan anything, but it's on purpose.
Yeah,
though.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's one of the things. Like me and Lydia, my wife, we did a vacation to Vegas. We had one thing planned. We were going to go see the Tournament of Kings. Is that what it's called?
At Excalibur. Yeah.
Tournament of Kings.
Probably.
But aside from that, we had like 2 hours before the show from our previous thing that we were doing, and it's like that 2 hours is going to be to take us where we will.
Yeah.
We walked the strip. It was my first time being there since I was little. I was 6 or 7 the last time I was there.
Yeah.
And so it's rare when I do that though. But for the most part, GPS is up. I have it up on my car. Nowadays the cars have like the dash where it has like Google Maps built into it.
Yeah.
So
it's the. I also love King's phrasing here. He says like being able to remember forward in time.
Yeah,
that's an interesting way to portray kind of that drive that Jake had earlier, and that he's kind of looking for this time, and he's not getting it. I just love the way that he phrases that, being able to remember forward in time. That's an interesting little thing. Maybe it reminds you a little bit of Donnie Darko with the little chest things coming out and showing where he's going to go and stuff. Leads him to the gun.
Yeah.
It's a fun little movie.
Right.
It's this time of year too, almost October.
Halloween.
I always think of that as a movie to watch in October because it happens over the course of that month. So it's one to definitely watch in that time frame.
Hey, next episode will be Halloween.
What?
Next episode we record will be in October.
Yeah, it's in October, certainly.
Halloween is October. I'm sorry. People are like, I'm one of those people. I love Halloween.
Yeah, that's why for me, September 1st through whatever. Sometimes Christmas.
I'm okay if we skip Thanksgiving too. There's nothing good about Thanksgiving.
A little bitter, huh? Okay, moving into subchapter 14. I'll jump up right off the top here. It says Roland's small band of travelers reached the crest of the long, gentle hill that they had been climbing, which I got to stop and pause and just say a hill with the wheelchair. That wouldn't be fun. And stood looking southeast.
At least it was a gentle hill.
Yeah, but still, it's a hill.
Not a rugged one.
That's not a light wheelchair. Didn't they say it's probably in the realm of like 90 pounds? Not to mention if she's in it, and then you're going up even a slight. Yeah, that's torturous.
At least she can help now. They're on the road.
They probably have her in the harness.
No.
I would. If I was going up a hill, it'd be easier to have her on the harness and just push the empty chair. That thing's bad enough without adding, her weight, which I'm not saying that she's heavy, but adding her weight to the already almost 100-pound wheelchair up an incline.
But you also add her help as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd just throw her in the harness and just freaking, I don't know. I mean, if she didn't hate the harness so much, I probably would have thrown the wheelchair away altogether, that freaking monster of a thing. Especially Eddie. He's from the late 80s. He at least understood more what we kind of know. Wheelchairs have come a long way in the last 30-something years anyway. Like ones we used to see as kids versus what they have now is like 100 times better. Yeah. But still, Eddie would have been familiar with like semi-reasonable wheelchairs to our perspective, let alone that freaking nightmare of a thing. And then it goes on here. It says, for a long time, none of them spoke. Suzanne opened her mouth twice and then closed it again. For the first time in her life as a woman, she was completely speechless. Which is funny because I've never really considered her to be one that wouldn't be speechless.
It should have been Eddie.
Yeah, like Eddie, like saying he's speechless. That's like holy shit. That'd be like that's like Roland telling a joke. You're like, wait, Eddie doesn't have anything to say, but her, like, I don't know. It feels like she's a little bit more. I don't want to say she's like reserved or anything because I don't think that she is, but I do think that she's like, I almost perceive her as more like intellectual, to where like she'll be the one that will like quietly watch and listen to understand more and then speak. So like I guess for it to say like she was completely, maybe that's the idea, is completely speechless.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the part that is the first time in her life.
She's very strongly opinionated though.
Yeah.
So saying that she's completely speechless, where she can't even like come up with anything, that's where it's the shocking part for it.
Yeah. But yeah, so she's completely speechless for the first time as an adult. So they crested this hill and definitely, and then it kind of goes on here with a little bit of an explanation of what you're seeing in this valley. As on the other side of it, it's lush, emerald green, very high. You've got trees, as well as it mentions some animals, which we mentioned a couple episodes back that we haven't really seen a lot of wildlife. Mm-hmm. We saw some billy bumblers that were discussed about eating. Eddie did, as a matter of fact. But we talked about there's the cat that you heard in the distance in the second book, but we never saw that. But now it says some herd of large animals grazing peacefully that looked like buffalo. So I just had to point that out at least because I mentioned not that long ago that we haven't really seen a whole lot of animals in this world. So kind of cool to see them when we do. Large buffalo-looking creatures. And every time I think of buffaloes, I always think of Tom Cullen from The Stand. It's like, those aren't cows. What are those things? Because, he's obviously from a small town and probably never seen anything other than cows. So buffaloes would be a big change there. But let's see. I'm just looking at the notes here. Did you have something here? Oh,
yeah, you just covered it.
Oh, I didn't even see you had that note. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I thought yours was the next one here. I missed the highlight for yours there.
No, that's okay. So go ahead. You just covered everything in that. So just covering the animals and the widespread tops. Basically, it's like the American plains is what I got.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing. Which like Kansas, kind of in my mind, what I always think of is like for that, because I feel like you could almost still see that today in Kansas, whereas like other places not so much. Of course here we don't have anything like that at all. I remember the first time I ever drove like all the way to Nebraska and drove through Nebraska, like it was weird because it was like Wyoming, a good chunk of Wyoming still just looks like Utah. Yep. But then as you get further and further, it starts looking a little more different. By the time you get to Nebraska, it's like, dude, this is like completely fucking different. Like it's so weird. You get like the sky meets the ground. Like that's not something that happens here.
Nope.
we don't have that here. Like here the sun.
I still feel the most jarring thing that I've seen personally in my life, aside from because the East Coast, it didn't look, I mean, it was flat, but I'd seen flat before because I'd been to South Dakota, I'd been to Nebraska, like you're talking about. I think the most jarring thing visually for me to see, talking about like the American plains, is when you come over I-70 to drop down into Colorado, it's like a sudden steep drop down in. And you've driven that, haven't you?
Yeah.
You just see Denver, and you just see the American plains just laid out in front of it.
Yeah.
If you ever get the chance, take a look at it, Google it. It's breathtaking to see like the flight, because that's the other side of the Rockies. We're up here in the middle of the Rockies. It was situated right in kind of like a valley in between two different little mountain ranges that make up the Rocky Mountains. That's getting on the other side of the Rocky Mountains where they stop. And that King has talked about it in several of his books. The one that I remember is Dr. Sleep. When they're driving up, all of a sudden you're driving towards the Rockies.
Yeah.
So basically imagine being up in the Rockies looking down is what I'm talking about. And that's what I picture here. I've done that drive a couple times driving into Denver.
Yeah.
And there's just that breathtaking, just there's Denver, but beyond it, it's just flat.
Yeah.
It's just flat open. I just think of it as prairie land, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, the other thing that was weird, though, for me, too, when I went to Mexico, is the sun coming up and the ocean, and it's just basically like a line, and it's the ocean, and then the sun. Like, because, again, we're not used to that.
No.
Usually it's just like the mountains, like the sun slowly starts to peek over the mountains. By that point, it's like, you know.
That's the one thing that threw me off on the East Coast when I stayed in, like, Pennsylvania and New York. We actually didn't stay in New York. We stayed in New Jersey. And, yeah, I remember being up when the sun came up, and I'm like, it's not coming up over mountains. Like, what the hell?
It's just coming straight. I was like, yeah, very weird. Definitely something. It's just funny. All the different things to use to. But, yeah, I'm with you there 100%. I'm picturing, and it does say, like, spreaded, you know, and plains and stuff like that, very open. You got and again, Buffalo, I almost think of from that, like, Great Plains region is kind of what I picture for Buffalo too, even though I know they're all over the place. Like, I mean, we've got them here, for instance, but yeah, I don't know. Stay away from them, though, if you run into them in the wild.
Yeah, they're big, giant creatures. You don't get near them. Yeah. It's a novel concept. Every year there's people who die in Yellowstone because they get too close to buffalo.
Even here, there's people. There was one guy who got, because I usually cheer for the animal, because it's like usually it's just people being dumb, and it's like you deserve whatever you get. But there was one that I actually felt bad for the person, because he was just like here in Utah. He was jogging up at like Antelope Island and got freaking
gored,
buffaloed by a bison, and it's just like that dude wasn't calling it himself. He probably was just jogging and didn't realize that, like,
he had gotten close enough.
Yeah, he got close to a very, very large beast.
You know what? You got to call into question, why are you out jogging in, you know, a preserve?
Yeah,
like, I don't go to African safaris to go out jogging.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I had to feel bad. But usually, though, like, I watch videos on YouTube and stuff, and I see these people that are just like getting out of their cars and going up, approaching like a bear or a moose or a buffalo, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is Darwin stuff here. Like, you're literally just asking for it at this point.
I remember,
you know?
I literally just saw one. It was last year that it happened. Woman got out of her car and attempted to get up next close to a grizzly bear. Not only was it a grizzly bear, it was a grizzly bear mother with her cubs. I'm like, have you never heard of Mama Bear? Like, like seriously, like, are you just that dumb? It drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. But then the next note here, it says that was the direction she realized in which all the creeks and streams that they had encountered had been flowing. They were tributaries of the vast river that emerged from the jutting arm of the forest and flowed placid and dreaming under the summer sun toward the eastern edge of the world. It was wide, that river, perhaps 2 miles from bank to bank, which that is insane to me. Like, how wide's like the Mississippi? You know, like 2 miles wide, that seems like insane to me in terms of width. Like, I don't even know if is there any real rivers that actually have that kind of girth. I mean, of course, this is a different world. I'm not like doubting it. I'm just saying, like, that's insane for me to think about. Like,
at Lake Itasca, the river is between 20 and 30 feet wide.
For the Mississippi,
the widest part. Oh, that's the narrowest.
Whoops.
Okay. It's wider. Oh, fucking hell. Lake Winnebagochish near Benna, Montana, where it is wider than 11 miles. So,
which river?
Mississippi?
In Montana?
Yeah. That's where it starts. It starts up in Montana and comes all the way down through.
I was thinking there was another state between there somewhere. Interesting. Okay, so it isn't that isn't even that.
To be fair, that is where it's flowing through a lake.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
So
still 2 miles. That's a hefty river. And it says, and she could see the city. which is a fun little way for King to reveal that there. Because again, he's just painting a picture here, and what I love about it too is with the way that King's doing it here is this is something you couldn't do in a movie because there's no way to portray this on screen that you would hide the city. You know what I mean? Like it would be evident the second that shot showed, and like nobody would even notice the rest of the shit. They would just focus on the city. They wouldn't see the animals. They wouldn't see the plains. They would just see maybe the river, and they'd see the city. So that's what I love about literature is like he has the ability to like guide us through what we're seeing and to kind of like paint the whole picture. Very Bob Ross-ish.
Here's one just to go back to the wide river part. At its widest point, the Amazon River can be 6.8 miles wide during the dry season.
Good Lord.
During the rainy season in the Amazon River, floods surrounding the plains, it can be up to 24.8 miles wide.
Interesting. So, yeah, I guess that just seems...
Jesus, a quarter?
That just seems crazy. I mean, I guess we're out here in the desert.
We don't have many huge rivers running here through Utah, but...
No,
man.
It's definitely not. Oops, I accidentally clicked something here. Let me get back to where we're at here. And then it says that it lay dead ahead, a misty collection of spires and towers rising above the far edge of the horizon. Those airy ramparts might have been 100 miles away, or 200, or 400. The air of this world seemed to be totally clear, and that made the judging the distance a fool's game. All she knew for sure is that the sight of those dim towers filled her with silent wonder and deep aching homesickness for New York. She thought, I believe I'd do almost anything to see the Manhattan skyline from the Triborough Bridge again. So, I could definitely see that, and I love that, the way that King does that too. So the fact that she's thinking about New York probably gives us as readers the idea that it probably looks like New York, which at least gives us an equivalent, because like city can mean anything, right? I mean, I assume like tall is not, that's a town, but when you start saying city, like that could be something of any size, really. Like something like here in Utah, the second biggest city is West Valley City. There's nothing taller than probably 10 stories in the entire city. Like it's not.
I think think the tallest building now is that hotel they built down by the mall, which is 10, 12 stories tops, like you're saying.
Yeah. Not that much. So like a city could be something like that, or it could be New York. So the fact that she's thinking about New York, though, it's a clever way for King to kind of inform us as readers. The fact that it's drawing her to New York probably means that it looks very similar to New York.
Exactly.
And it's not Salt Lake City or anything. It's a big fucking city that is New York City size. So I love that. I love the way that King does that. It's very graceful the way that he does that, and of course throws in some homesickness for Susanna. Which is one that I wouldn't expect as much. Eddie, on the other hand, he threatened to kill Roland to get back to New York. So.
He threatened to kill Roland to get back to Chicken, to be clear.
Chicken.
That's what we're going to call it.
Chicken,
I want to correct one thing I said. It wasn't Montana. It's Minnesota. I mixed up my abbreviations. MN and MT.
That's okay. That makes more sense.
Minnesota,
I was say Montana. Like that.
You said that and it stuck with me, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then so I clicked on the lake. Yeah, it's in Minnesota. So it's what it is, it's the river runs into the lake. Then there you have the lake, and then the river runs out of the lake.
Yeah.
So technically, it's still the river.
Nah.
So I think that's cheating too. I'm with you on that one.
Lakes in Minnesota. I didn't know that was a thing.
The land of 10,000 lakes.
And the Lakers moved to LA where there are no lakes. Basketball reference for anyone that catches that.
If anyone doesn't understand that, just Google basketball opening.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. It's the guy that did South Park, but
it's actually so funny.
Yeah, I mean, except it isn't them that wrote it though. I think the guy that wrote it's the guy that did Airplane.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They just picked it up and made it. I
mean, they're the ones that were the stars and stuff, but ultimately, writing wise, the guy that wrote Airplane. So yeah, highly recommend it.
I always thought they wrote it. Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, they had probably some improv. Like there's a Eric Cartman voice scene in there, but yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I love it. It's one of my favorite comedies.
It's so stupid. I love it.
I had to make a reference there, but go on. You have the next note here.
Then she had to smile because that wasn't the truth. The truth was she wouldn't trade Roland's world for anything. Its silent mystery and empty spaces were intoxicating. And her lover was here. In New York, the New York of her own time at least, they would have been objects of scorn and anger, the butt of every idiot's cruel jokes. A black woman of 26, they were getting her age. Didn't we have a discussion about that at one point?
We did. We had that discussion a couple times, and I believe Chris from Australia has corrected us a few different times on it.
Yeah.
Because I think we both, and maybe I don't even know, but we've always, I think you and I put her closer to our age, like in the 30s, which was Chris.
She always
has corrected
feels
us.
so much older than.
And I think it's because she has like that dignity about her.
Yeah.
Like she kind of has like, because she's from a richer family, and stuff. So I think she has this posh thing
maturity
that makes her she makes her more mature, which then I think you just assume more age on her. When I actually highlighted it for the same reason. I'm like, we've had this discussion multiple times, so it's cool to actually have it. Not only do you have her age, but it also gives Eddie's age too at the same time. So it's kind of cool to see both of their ages.
When I made this note, I missed that part for some reason. You know how it is when you're making notes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you usually look at the beginning and the end of it, where you want to go to. A black woman of 26 and her white bread lover who was 3 years younger and who had a tendency to talk like dis and dat when he got excited. That's what drove it from my mind, was that line. I love that line. Eddie talking like this and Eddie talking like that. Her white bread lover who had been carrying a heavy monkey on his back only 8 months before. Oh, there we get a time frame for how long they've been in.
I actually missed that though, but that's actually So 8 months since. Would that be like the shuffles, like when he detoxes?
I think it would be for when Eddie came through the door, is where I would peg it.
Okay.
When Roland sweeps that door closed to now, 8 months.
8 months. It's interesting. That's a good one to take note of there, because at some point I would love to like dissect the actual timeline of this whole series. Mm-hmm. I don't know that King gives us enough to actually do it,
but what he does give us would be fascinating.
It would be fascinating to see how far we could take it and dissect it. Well, as we're going through this, we'll have to keep track of that.
Yeah. Here, there was no one to jeer or laugh. Here, no one was pointing a finger. Here, there were only Roland, Eddie, and herself, the world's last 3 gunslingers. That's one of the real reasons why I wanted to highlight this, is because of what she said right there. The world's last 3 gunslingers. Even in her mind, they're gunslingers, not Roland's, because we've heard Roland talk about that at the beginning of this book.
Yeah.
Where he was training up Susanna, is that she's a gunslinger. Like, he knows it. He's seen her, he's teaching her the lessons and everything like that, treating her like a gunslinger, he even says.
Yeah.
When she gets on him about the, make sure those chips of rock are the people who, they're honky muffas, that kind of thing. She gets all up on him, and he's like, well, you're a gunslinger, you can take it. Kind of thing. Here, even in her mind, she's a gunslinger, and so is Eddie to her.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I want to point out too is what I love is like, for this pretty brutal world that they're in. We've talked about it time and again, how Roland sees our world, how it's painted because of the way his world is, and then also how Eddie and Susanna are dealing with this world. Like, this is a very ruthless and unforgiving world that they're in here. But what I love is that for her, coming from the 1960s, it's a pretty horrific world that she came from,
Yeah.
And, she loves Eddie here, and that would absolutely not be tolerated in her time period. Nope. That wouldn't be seen with anything other than, as she says, scorn, finger pointing, name calling. Like, it would be whatever. She comes from a pretty horrific time period of the 3 that we're dealing with here. Eddie in the late 80s, Jake in the late 70s, and her in the early 60s. Like, there's no comparison. She's in the worst possible time of the 3, and obviously, so to see her equating this pretty horrific world in a lot of ways as so much better is, I just find it interesting. Especially as a history fan and stuff, like, and then keeping in mind where she comes from time period wise. It's an interesting comparison, I guess, from her mind to see it compared to where she came from. Obviously, like, she was just at going to the South and getting arrested and humiliated, like, not that long before getting pulled into this world. So, like, I don't know. I guess it paints also her a little bit more for me, to where it's like, oh yeah, she isn't coming from the same soft world as Eddie, or especially Eddie, because he's so much further down the line. Jake has a 10, 12 some odd year jump from her, but or Jake does, but Eddie's like 20 something years. So it's a completely different world, and she's lived in a pretty rough world. And I guess that just, I don't know, I guess it never dawned on me until doing this and really thinking about it, because it's so easy to breeze by some of these lines when you're just reading it normally, but it's just, I don't know, I guess maybe some of the metal that Roland sees in her like is understandable. Like she needs it. You know,
Yeah.
she has to have it to be who she is in the world that she lives in. You know, she obviously had 2 pretty horrific things happen in her life, not to mention just the fact that she's a black woman in the early 60s. Like,
Not just a black woman, a wealthy one.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to be, you know, I'm going to say this, and I am not, please don't take this out of context. It's one thing to be black and be where the whites of the time expected you to be in your place, you know, to be poor, to be, you know, uneducated and everything like that.
and she talks about that. Like
And she does. And that's why I remember
about
that.
the neighborhood, and in terms of like, you know, how everyone hated her for living there because she was the only black person that lived in this rich New York neighborhood.
It was always the big thing during the I want to call it the race riots, but that's not right. The race for equality, basically.
Yeah.
Where
like civil rights era.
Civil rights era. That's the words I was looking for. Thank you. The big thing was that they had no problem. The people of the time had no problem with it, as long as they stuck to the social norm.
Yeah.
But as soon as you had someone go out of the way, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, someone like this,
or even like her with Eddie. Like,
yes, exactly.
If she had met Eddie in this 1964, where she came from, that wouldn't have gone well.
It would not, even though they're only 3 years apart. I mean, that's not a huge age
well,
gap.
no, not age, just the race.
No,
difference
exactly.
is
The
like,
race difference is the huge thing, because there is a thing with age where, you know, a 60-year-old man marries an 18-year-old girl.
Yeah, but
and everything. That's not at play here. But the big thing is that race, you know, is like, oh dang, you know, like that's a huge thing. I mean, we see that in with Malcolm X's life, him and his buddy and their 2 white girlfriends. What do? Rob a place, or is it? I can't remember exactly what they do. The girls get like probation, and they get like 10 years, you know, prison time. It's like when you go outside of your class or whatever it was. That's where it got really, really bad, and that's what she's talking about here.
Yeah,
but just
and she also, because she is rich, like it mentions when she goes to the South, like the area that she's in, she owns her family owns one of the big factories that employs a large part of that town. So it's like,
and towns around it.
Even when she's getting treated poorly, they still have soft gloves on for her. You know,
yeah,
it's like
they wouldn't touch her; they just keep her locked away
and humiliate her and stuff like that.
Until she, you know, has to go to
the
bathroom.
They're not like beating the hell out of her or anything, because so in a way she's living in a pretty horrific time, has to deal with a lot of horrific shit, but even still she's got it better off than some. And so it's just interesting to me, and like I guess I've never really connected that element of her, because like I think I've always just accepted like the badassness. I mean, we saw earlier with Shardik and stuff of her. But I just think in terms of connecting that to like her background, I don't know why I've never made that connection. But
you know, it's so funny to. I'm gonna tangent here for a second with something that we're talking about. It's so funny to me to see how we look at the past versus how we look at our own lives. I don't know if you do this, but 20 years ago to me still feels like it should be the 80s. You know?
Yeah.
Like we were born in the 80s. Both of us were born in 1985. So 20 years ago is, you know. Oh, I'm turning 20. It's 20 years ago is the 80s, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really weird to look at the world, how it's changed in our lifetime. We've been on this earth now for 35 years for me and 36 for you. No, 36 for you. Yeah, you just had your birthday. Happy birthday, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Well, Ted had his birthday last week, everyone.
Yeah, a little bit ago. Yeah, I guess it was about a week ago, wasn't it?
A week ago. But, you know, 35 and 36 years respectively here, and the world from where we were born and when we were, let's just take it from when we were 10 years old, okay? 95, right? Look at how the world's changed from 1995 to today. Like, just socially. Don't look at technology. Just look at socially.
Yeah.
How it's changed. When you look at the difference between Eddie and Susanna, 60s to 80s, like you're talking about, to me it's like, well, that's a big difference. But when you think about your own life, sometimes it kind of just gets blurred a little bit because you lived through it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about that, how big of a difference that really is for those two.
Yeah.
Between how everything had changed in the 80s in New York versus what it was in the 60s.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, they could have legit been run out of town in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like legit run out of town. In the 80s, that would have never happened.
Yeah. I just saw a tweet yesterday that said that Daniel, now for the Karate Kid, Daniel's son is now older than Mr. Miyagi was in the first movie.
What? No way. Is he really?
Yeah.
Damn.
And because I think it was actually a response to another tweet that said that the movie Apollo 13, we are further away from that movie than the movie was from the actual launching of Apollo 13.
Really?
Yeah. So,
I hate those things. That's so weird.
and that's why I love bringing it up, because I know it hurts you deeply. So,
Hashtag Ted is terrible.
oh man, I mean, just think, how quick things go. 10 years from now, your kid's gonna be out of high school.
Can you not? I know she won't be. Thank you very much. 10 years from now, she will not be out of high school.
Isn't she 9?
No, she's 8. She turns 9 next month, which
Oh.
means that this will be her senior year in 10
okay.
years. So
Okay.
you just shut your mouth.
Still, it's gotta hurt you on the inside there.
I hate you.
Okay, so then going on here, it says, oh, stupid thing. I hate this. Sometimes I click and it changes pages. Roland pointed, that must be the Send River, he said in a low voice. I've never thought to see it in my life. Wasn't even sure it was real, like the Guardians. So again, just giving us context of this world, like there's so much about this world. Okay, Guardians, giant animals that guard the portals at the end of the beam.
Shardic.
Like, that makes sense to maybe understand that, whatever. But to think to a river that I didn't even know if it was real, like that again, that tells us like Roland's not from like
He's not from this neighborhood.
I guess what I'm saying is he grew up in a time before the world fell, and he grew up in literally the best possible place. Like he's literally royalty. So he's not from some like place that's lost all this. Like he's had knowledge of it at his fingertips and stuff. And so for him to say a river is something that he didn't even know was real, like that just puts context to what this is like. This world that he lives in, like it just seems like how long ago would that have been that somebody in this real world would have like maybe disbelieved something existed, like a river, like that.
Well, it's like you have stories of that all throughout history.
But how long you have to go back? 200 years, 300 years to get to the realm where people disbelieve.
There's
like,
people
rivers
today that
Well,
believe
no,
that the moon's not real. We've never landed on it. There's people today that believe that the Earth is flat.
No, but I'm saying
That's
like
today.
I'm just saying widely. Like there's fringe elements certainly, but I'm just saying like the realm where it's like, oh yeah, this like I think of like how long ago it was that people weren't sure that America existed. Like you're talking what 400 something years you have to go back to get to the realm of like
500.
Yeah, to get to the realm where like
400. You're right. Yeah,
like
1692.
So that's just so far back in history. So just to see that Roland's world is that way, that even though that would have been at the pinnacle of intelligence and knowledge, being at literally like the son of what would have been the king of this world, the kingdom of like whatever. So he had education stuff. So the fact that to him still like rivers is like something, I guess maybe it shows the life that he's lived too, that maybe since the world moved on, like there are certain things that he'd always heard about, but he just got to the point where just started to think maybe they just don't exist. Like I've always heard about this river and I've always heard about these Guardians, but I've never seen them. So maybe Roland's just become kind of an unbeliever of certain things that he grew up learning. But yeah, I just love that idea of
it's that way for one of the things that sticks out to me with like the world exploration where, Africa was a little bit discovered. America hadn't even been discovered yet. Was the different types of animals. I mean, you think about like Komodo dragons and kangaroos and, fucking saltwater crocodiles. Do you imagine what the first European explorers thought when they came across the first 20-foot, like, huge saltwater croc? Like, my God, that's a dinosaur. Oh, wait, they didn't even know what dinosaurs were because the bones hadn't been discovered
it was a dragon.
yet. Yeah, they thought it was a dragon. That's where you get all these myths and legends from. I mean, Jesus, just within the last 20 years, we finally got our first video and pictures of a live giant squid.
Yeah.
Or is it giant octopus?
Which is terrible.
Is it giant squid or giant octopus?
Which is terrible to think about such things exist.
That's where the Kraken came from, right? Like it's where it had to have come from.
Yeah, it's.
Did one happen to pull down one of those rinky-dink wooden vessels that we used to sail around the world on? Probably. One probably got pissed one day with something that happened to it.
Yeah.
Some sperm whale pissed it off and went, you know what? I'm going to take it out of these stupid little humans on this stupid little boat. And the other boat that was 10 miles away went, oh my God, it's Kraken.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you got next here? I know we're tangenting.
Oh,
here.
my bad. So this is where Suzanne is looking over the plains and everything like that. She raised her free hand and pointed toward the place where the great road narrowed to a point. There's your city, she said, isn't it? Yes. It looks okay, Eddie said. Is that possible, Roland? Could it still be pretty much intact? Did the old-timers build that well? Anything is possible in these times, Roland said, but he sounded doubtful. You shouldn't get your hopes up, though, Eddie. Huh? No. But Eddie's hopes were up. You just know Eddie's like, you know what he's hoping for.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost the spot here. You shouldn't get your hopes up. Yes. Figuring out where your note ended there. So, did you go all the way on this note to where it says the city dwellers might be Americans? Eddie subconscious whispered.
I was going to, but there's a lot there with that. But yeah, there is a part where he hopes that they're American and everything like that. And he talks about the people that, like the Last Starfighter and the Dark Crystal, these like nice futuristic people and everything like that.
Yeah. And then, he's thinking about a AAA tour guide map to the Dark Tower as well. Love that. Very late 80s vibe there for sure. And then he's thinking about, Army surplus stores. And, he just has this whole grand illusion here. All right, he said, almost laughing out loud in his excitement. Hey ho, let's go. Bring on those wise fucking elves. Susanna looked at him puzzled, but smiling. What are you raving about, white boy? Nothing. Never mind. I just want to get moving. What do you say, Roland? Want to? But something on Roland's face, or just beneath it, some lost, dreaming thing caused him to fall silent and put one arm around Susanna's shoulder as if to protect her. And that's a happy little thing to happen.
Especially with someone who's going crazy.
Well, and also just like someone that knows the world is how I perceive that, right? Like, you're all happy, you're joyous, you look at the city, but the guy that knows the most about this world has seen something that his reaction to it is such that it completely stops you in your tracks. Like,
and that's not anyone stopping in their tracks. That's Eddie Dean stopping in their tracks.
that's a hard one to derail there, Mr. Eddie Dean. So let's jump over to subchapter 15 here.
We're picking it up right from the start after that. After one brief dismissive glance at the city skyline, Roland's gaze had been caught by something a good deal closer to their current position. Something that filled him with disquiet and foreboding. He had seen such things before, and the last time he come across one, Jake had been with him. So that's where I'm just like, wait, what? Like,
yeah, Yeah, and it kind of has a little bit of filling in here, talking about the Man in Black and kind of the route that was taken in the first book. Then a little bit further down here it says, one night he had awakened to find Jake gone. He had heard struggling, desperate cries coming from a willow grove, hard by a narrow trickle of stream. By the time that he had fought his way through to the clearing at the center of the grove, the boy's cries had ceased. Roland had found him standing in a place exactly like the one which lay below and ahead, a place of stone, a place of sacrifice, a place where an oracle lived and spoke when it was forced to and killed whenever it could. So yeah, I think we all are kind of remembering what we're referencing here. Yep. And the fact that their king just laid it out that laying ahead is something very similar. So, kind of reminding us what we're seeing, but I don't know if Eddie and Susanna fully understand this. I think Roland told his story somewhat to Eddie in book 2, but I don't think has Susanna even heard the full story.
I think they covered each other's stories. I think they said that.
Okay. But go ahead. What do you got?
Right after that, Roland, Eddie asked, "What is it? What's wrong?" "Do you see that?" Roland pointed. "It's a speaking ring. The shape you see at are tall standing stones." He found himself staring at Eddie, whom he had first met in the frightening but wonderful air carriage of that strange other world where the gunslingers wore blue uniforms and there was an endless supply of sugar, paper, and wonderful drugs like Aston. Some strange expression, some foreknowledge was dawning on Eddie's face. That bright hope which had lit his eyes as he surveyed the city whiffed out, leaving him with a look both gray and bleak. It was the expression of a man studying the gallows on which he will soon be hanged. First Jake, and now Eddie, the gunslinger thought. The wheel which turns our lives is remorseless. Always it comes around to the same place again. That terrified me the first time I read it. Being such an Eddie fan. First Jake, now Eddie. I remember what happened to Jake.
Yeah. Oh, I can just see you getting all worked up first time you're reading it. Like, yes, I've driven you to that realm of huffing and puffing and whatnot. So yes, Stephen King obviously doing the same thing to you there. Some little recaps there, talking about the sky carriage and our world from Roland's perspective. Let's see, and I love that, the endless supply of sugar, paper, and wonderful drugs like Aston. So
Yeah.
those are like the Mount Rushmore items of our world to Roland, and I love that. It tells you a lot about, like, it just feels like our world is so whatever, and it's just, so for him to reduce it down to that is just kind of hilarious to me. And then here it says, "Oh shit," Eddie said. His voice is dry and scared. "I think that's a place where the kid's going to try to come through." The gunslinger nodded. "Very likely. They're thin places, and they're also attractive places. I followed him to such a place once before. The oracle that kept there came very close to killing him." So, yeah, very just
there it is.
reminding people. At this point, the gunslinger had been published widely, but I think it's good. It's kind of an interesting way for King to kind of remind us, without going too deep or anything, but just to kind of give us a reminder, if maybe we hadn't read it since 1982 when it came out, and here we are 9 years later in 1991 when this is published. Just a good reminder, I guess, because as an author, you can't assume that people are going to binge the first couple books before diving into the new one. So it's kind of, I like how he's kind of recapping it here. And yes, very somber and very, And Roland feels like he's so matter of fact about a lot of stuff that when he is taking something with weight, it makes you take notice a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's just so whatever.
It's one of those things where it's like, you have this really strong and brave character. When they get scared, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that moment in a book or a video game or a movie where it's the big, tall, tough guy that's been, quiet through the whole thing, slaughtering all the bad guys, and then it's like you hear a roar in the distance, and that guy goes, and you're like, oh, what the fuck scares him?
Yeah, exactly. What do you got next here?
So they're talking about Jake coming through. Is it going to happen today? Roland asked. Tonight? Eddie shook his head again and licked his lips. I don't know that either. Not for sure. Tonight? I don't think so. Time. It isn't the same over here as it is where the kid is. It goes slower in his where and when. Maybe tomorrow.
So that's interesting, because King's already put us on a clock a bit. We understood that. But now he's kind of
fucking with the clock.
altering the deal a bit, now the clock has been changed, and it's interesting because it tells us about what we got going here. Now it looks like the world of New York City, Jake's world, our world, is running slower than the world here with Roland and company and his merry band of misfits here. And then it goes on here and says he had been battling panic, but now it broke free. He turned and grabbed Roland's shirt with his cold, sweating fingers. But I'm supposed to finish the key, and I haven't. And I'm supposed to do something else, and I don't have a clue about what it is. And if the kid dies, it'll be my fault. The gunslinger locked his own hands over Eddie's and pulled them away from his shirt. Get control of yourself. Roland, don't you understand? I understand that whining and puling won't solve your problems. I understand that you have forgotten the face of your father. Quit that bullshit. I don't give a dick about my father, Eddie shouted hysterically. And Roland hit him across the face. His hand made a sound like a breaking branch. Eddie's head rocked back, his eyes widened with shock. He stared at the gunslinger and then slowly raised his hand to touch the reddening handprint on his cheek. You bastard, he whispered. His hand dropped to the butt of the revolver he still wore on his left hip. Susanna tried to put her own hand over it. Eddie pushed them away. Definitely, I love Roland for the most part, but there are certainly times where it's like, man, he is no diplomat.
Nope.
Well, I don't know if I would go so far as say he's no diplomat, but he doesn't seem...
He does not coddle.
No, and I think some of it comes back to, we've seen his father a bit, we've seen his teacher, Court, and I wonder if some of that comes down to them. But yeah, he has a very specific way about him, because I think of the way he acted with Allie and stuff, he's not always just this brutal dude. But I just think that he treats Eddie and Susanna a certain way, and maybe that's the teacher gunslinger thing that he's taking kind of what how he received from his father and from Court. He's kind of maybe trying to be the same thing. But yeah, he's just
you teach the way that you've been taught.
Yeah, and there's just no tact to him, and he's just he's not.
Is it me, or does it feel like he does this way more often to Eddie than he does to Susanna?
Yeah, and I think because honestly, it comes down to I think Susanna's more of a finished product in a lot of ways. You know, she again we talked about it earlier, the different times they come from. She had like not only is she from a more noble quote unquote background, being from a having a rich background. I know her dad made the fortune, but you know, so she grew up in a richer area, so she was probably taught a certain way. Not only that, but like in terms of strength and resolve and stuff, like this is a woman that was going to the South during the 60s to protest like that. Like she's literally taking her life in her own hands. Like there are many accounts of people going down there and being murdered by the law enforcement officers. So like I just think that because of her background, I think she is a little bit more well-rounded, I guess. Not that she's a perfected article, but I think that Eddie has had a different kind of life, not an easy life, but compared to hers, I think it's an easy life.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is it's part of the generation that you grow up in and the decade that you grow up in. It's what people say about like today's generations is that, you know, we're a lot softer than the people who had to, you know, work, you know, 14, 16-hour days every day.
Or grew up in the Depression.
Or who grew up in the Depression were tougher than the ones who came, you know, after that, and the baby boomers and everything like that. So you get that from every generation, and that's where, you know, this is the case here with that, is that Susanna grew up especially with her being black.
Yeah.
She grew up with that toughness that Eddie didn't have a hard life. He didn't have a necessarily easy life. I'd say he had a medium life.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like he was, you know, persecuted by racists, you know, his whole life and everything like that. He was on the poorer side. He grew up without a dad, you know, that kind of thing.
And his mom wasn't necessarily uncaring like Jake, because I think of like Jake as well. Add him into the equation. It's like, you know, Jake's kind of in the middle ground. He's growing up in the late 70s, but his parents are completely detached. His mom's a freaking junkie. His dad is so uncaring and detached. Like literally, like the nanny is his closest like person, you know, to him in his life.
Friend.
So yeah, and like kind of friend, but also kind of parent. Like that's the one that actually gets some love and caring from, but he understands that she's getting paid for it, you know, like he understands, he's mature enough to realize whatever. So it's just like, it's kind of like the three bears, you know, you've got different degrees of things there. With Susanna though, I just think that, of course she also went through a lot of trauma with the brick and the train, and that obviously caused the multiple personalities. But I think that once that got resolved and merged together into one person, like I think that like the strength of Detta, you know, along with like the intelligence and stuff of Susanna or of Detta or Odetta merges into Susanna. I just think that, I think it comes down to where she is more of a finished product. Like whereas Eddie, he still has some burrs, you know, that need to be cleaned up.
He's got some rough edges that need to be sanded out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I think you're correct. I think we certainly see a different relationship with him and Eddie, but I don't think that's like because she's a woman. I don't think that like it's because she doesn't have like I feel like if she had the same kind of rough edges as Eddie, I think Roland would be treating her the exact same way.
Of course he would. She's a gunslinger.
Exactly. Like I think because in our mind you think, oh well, you got to like girls get treated differently. You can't hit a girl. Like, do you think Roland would really, especially a apprentice gunslinger, do you think that he wouldn't slap her if it came down to it? Of course he would. Like,
no, there's no difference of how he would treat her.
Exactly, because I don't think there would have been a difference the way that Court would have treated if there was female gunslingers. Like there wouldn't have been. So Roland wouldn't. So I think the only reason there is, I guess I'm just trying to like point that out too, is like because I don't think that he's like treating them differently because of who they are, like superficially. I think he's treating them differently because of who they are in their deepest self, you know, like an Eddie is just not a finished product yet. So he has a little, like if you're, what is it with the swords, you know, or you're, you know, hammering the sword down out of the fire and stuff, like Eddie,
when you're blacksmithing,
Eddie needs a lot more of that. Whereas she's already pretty strong, you know.
Yeah. She just needs to be polished and sharpened,
fine-tuned.
She just needs to be sharpened. Eddie still needs to be made.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I perceive it, you know.
No,
like,
that's interesting to look at it that way, because me being Eddie, I'm just hating Roland at this point.
Yeah.
Like, can you not understand the pressure this man is under? Like, he's never experienced life or death, Roland.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the normal for him. Like, cut him some slack. But I guess that's one of the things, is that gunslingers don't get slack cut. You have to teach them that. Yeah,
and also I don't think Roland understands how easy Eddie's life was in comparison. Not saying Eddie had the easiest life, but compared to comparing to what Roland, you know, probably dealt with in a dying world, you know, we saw how he's being treated as a child by Court. Like yeah, Eddie has a pretty easy life compared to that. So I just think that like even like where you perceive like okay Eddie he needs to learn or whatever like how you're saying that, but it's like I don't think Roland would get that because the background that Eddie comes from is so alien to him that to Roland that he wouldn't understand like oh I know what you need this like, he just I know what gunslingers need and I know you're not there yet and I know how when I was in that position you're in I know how I got made to be in the position or made who I am now.
How I was taken from where you are to where I am now is following this path. Therefore, that's what Eddie's going to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I perceive it. But
picking up right where you were is Eddie pushed Susanna's hands away. He just reached for the revolver. And now I must teach again, Roland thought. Only this time I teach for my own life, I think, as well as for his. Somewhere in the distance, a crow hailed its harsh cry into the stillness. Roland thought for a moment of his hawk, David. Now Eddie was his hawk, and like David, he would not scruple to tear out his eyes if he gave so much as a single inch, or his throat. So I like that that's it's always that interesting thing with Stephen King with Roland is he does these things where it's like, man, Roland's such a bastard. And then the next paragraph explains why he is a bastard and why he has to be.
Yeah.
And I see it here, like he's like, oh, okay, so I got to teach him. I got to be careful with him, but I got to teach him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the comparing it to David as well, because it's like ultimately we know. That's the other part of it, though, is we know what happened to David. Mm-hmm. Like Roland sacrificed him for his ultimate means. Yep. And because Eddie's already called him on that, right? It's like if it's our lives or your tower, what's it going to be? Is going to be us or your tower? And like Roland doesn't answer, but it's like Eddie knows full well. And so I think King's painted us the picture already, kind of how this all works. Like ultimately, like if it does come down to it, Roland is not going to let Eddie, Susanna, Jake come in between him and his tower. Like that's not going to happen. So, it's I think about that though when he compares Eddie and David. I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, I know you're the Eddie fan. It's like, ugh.
Oh yeah.
So now I got a sound clip here for this next little chunk here. If you can take down the time, because I'll have to edit it for the YouTube side for the long term posting of the video. Otherwise, our thing will get pulled down for copyright. But we'll go ahead and listen to Mr. Frank Muller here for this next little section. That didn't work. Looks like, man, I cut that right. I don't know what happened here when it transferred. Sorry, looks like the sound clip is incomplete.
Oh, no.
I don't know what happened. I know I cut it correctly. In fact, I had it a little bit longer, and I remember having to chop down a tiny bit because I went further than the thing went. So let's see where we left off here.
I got it right here.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
Stop it, Susanna screamed at him. Can't you see he'll do it? Can't you see you're forcing him to do it? Roland cut his eyes toward her. I'm forcing him to decide. He looked back at Eddie, and his deeply lined face was stern. You have come from the shadow of the heroine and the shadow of your brother, my friend. Come from the shadow of yourself. If you dare, come now, come out, or shoot me and have done with it. How far did this go?
Until, just keep going.
Okay.
We can just recap, actually. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I don't think we've ever had an issue with the sound clip like that before. And then this is just a showdown, though, and I just love this. Yeah. I thought it was a super cool moment. That's why I wanted to do the sound clip. And then it says for a moment he thought Eddie was going to do just that and end it all right there. And then on this high ridge beneath the cloudless summer sky with spires of the city glimmering in the horizon like blue ghosts. And I love that because that almost seems like... what movie was it? No, it's not a movie. It's Breaking Bad. There's a point when Jesse, you think it's the end, and he looks up and sees like a bird in the sky and stuff. There's just like this like moment when like you assume it's over. I feel like this is kind of that, where because like Roland, it almost seems like he's like getting introspective there, where it's like, oh, this is where it ends. This cloudless sky. Out here in this plainish thing with in this city in the distance and stuff. And then a little bit further down here. This says, I'm afraid, you numb fuck. Don't you understand that, Roland? I'm afraid. His feet tangled together and he fell forward. Roland caught him and held him close, smelling the sweat and dirt on his skin, smelling his tears and terror. The gunslinger embraced him for a moment, then turned him towards Susanna. Eddie dropped to his knees beside her chair, his head hanging warily. She put She put a hand on the back of his neck, pressing his head against her thigh, and said bitterly to Roland, "Sometimes I hate you, big white man." Roland placed the heel of his hand against his forehead and pressed hard. "Sometimes I hate myself. Don't ever stop you, though. Do it." So I love that. I love Susanna kind of calling him out on, basically you're a shitty person, and Roland's
you're a shitty person.
And Roland's like, I know that. He's like, but it doesn't stop you though. So it's like there's kind of I don't know. For one, I love that, like, because I don't think that's just like the wife thing. I think that like that's genuinely just like Susanna has that metal to kind of bite back at Roland a little bit here. But ultimately, this is I don't know. It's a big moment, I feel like, because it's kind of this whole thing kind of coming to a head, and kind of Eddie admitting what's below all this, right? And I love that element there. You came from the shadow of heroin and the shadow of your brother, become from the shadow of yourself if you dare. Like, that's just that's awesome. Like, I feel like this is where it's actually coming to a head, and I feel like you can't fully fault Roland, because I think that he's got some points there. Like, I think that like Eddie is like has been getting over. He got over the heroin. I don't even want to say he's got over his brother, because I still think that's on his back a bit, but he's grown from that a bit. And I think now it's like, okay, now you've got self-doubt, you got this self-defeating shit that you've got to, that's one of your last big things you've really got to handle here. And I think that that's kind of cool, because again, we mentioned like earlier, like I feel like even the first time reading this, I remember thinking, even before we got to this moment here, it's like Eddie doesn't feel as finished. It feels like he needs a little bit more than Susanna. And like it was alluded to earlier, it's like, he trusts Susanna to take the shot with Shardik and stuff. Like, if it were reversed, does he have Eddie take that shot, or does he do it himself because he would think that Eddie would maybe crumble under like self-doubt, like in that moment? Like, I think he kind of knew, Susanna, you're in the right position that I can let you take this shot right now because you're in that spot to take it. But Eddie would like freak the fuck out if it was his wife in the midst of that bear and he had to try to take the shot to save her. Like, he might do it, but I don't think that he's as effective as he would normally be in that circumstance, just because kind of what Roland's pointing out here, he needs to overcome the last bit of almost self-defeating element of his life, or of his personality. So good there. Sorry I messed up the sound clip there, but what do you got next here?
So right after that, Eddie, Roland commands Eddie to stand up. He says, "Stand up, Eddie." I missed this one part. I forgot to highlight this. For a moment, he thought Eddie would simply go on crouching there and hiding his face against the woman's leg. If so, everything was lost, and that was Ka too. Then slowly, Eddie got to his feet. He stood there with everything: hands, shoulders, head, hair, hanging. Not good. But he was up, and that was a start. So I love that, where it's just like, okay, Eddie got up, but still he's just like in that posture of defeat. You see it all the time in sports. Hey, heads up. I saw a highlight of a coach in National Football League, football here in America, where the players made a bad play happen, a really bad play happen. The other team scored off of the mistake. And as the players were coming off, he's like, "Don't hang your heads. Don't you hang your heads. Keep those heads effing up. Keep them up. You keep your chins up." And it's just a mentality of that. You lower that head, that's defeat.
Yeah.
So that's what he's talking about here. And then a little bit further down, Eddie raises his head. "This is for you. I was wrong to take it at all. No matter how deep my pain," Roland curled his hand around the rawhide strip and yanked, snapping it. He held the key out to Eddie. Eddie reached for it like a man in a dream, but Roland did not immediately open his hand. "Will you try to do what needs to be done?" "Yes." His voice was almost inaudible. "Do you have something to tell me?" "I'm sorry, I'm afraid." There was something terrible in Eddie's voice, something which hurt Roland's heart, and he supposed he knew what it was. Here was the last of Eddie's childhood, expiring painfully among the three of them. It could not be seen, but Roland could hear its weakening cries. He tried to make himself deaf to them. "Something else I've done in the name of the tower. My score grows ever longer, and the day when it will all have to be toted up like a long-time drunkard's bill in an alehouse draws ever nearer. How will I ever pay?"
Yeah, and I love that, because I think that's King really put an exclamation point on it. It's the last of Eddie's childhood expiring, and I think that's kind of what what I was perceiving, with there was still some weakness and some stuff with Eddie that need to be refined. And ultimately, King puts a pretty good pin in it here by saying it's ultimately the last bits of his childhood. And it's like, because Eddie never really had a normal childhood, and he got dragged pretty quickly from the childhood into like being a druggie, which still is kind of like childish, like you're very selfish and just whatever. Like there's not a lot of maturity in that. So ultimately, this is the last bit of Eddie's childhood being killed, which is a painful thing. But ultimately, maybe that's kind of what what I was just talking about earlier with like kind of why there's a difference between Eddie and Susanna, and maybe even that's why we've always perceived Susanna being almost 10 years older than she actually is, because
she acts like it.
She has a different act to her where it's like Eddie, you probably downgrade his age based on how he acts prior to this. Like, he does almost come off very like college age 19, 20-year-old kid. Like he comes off that way,
It's so funny to look at how the world perceives adults that are just barely a year removed from being a fucking kid.
Yeah.
It's one thing where it's all of a sudden, oh, you're 18, you can make all the decisions in your world.
Yeah.
Like there's that whole with it, is it a stigma is how you would word it, where they're 18, they're a legal adult. They can
join the military.
They can ruin their credit score for life.
Yeah.
There are people that have done that.
They can take $50,000 in debt for student loans and stuff. Like, there's a lot. And I've actually seen sociologically where it's like comes down to like previous like in different times in history, there was like a coming of age something, Roland had his thing with court,
trial by combat,
but ultimately there was different things, whether it was like the Native Americans and they went on their first hunt on their own, or there was different things that and just throughout all different cultures there were different coming of age, like there was something you did that kind of brought you to age. Like there was some event that was like whatever, but a lot of those things would require a certain level of maturity and a certain level of
otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it,
or you'd fail. Yeah. And it's like, we don't really have that here. So it's like, it's easy, especially as we talk about how quick time slips through, that it's like that someone may not actually ever get the extra maturity and perspective on life, and they could be no different at 17 as they are when they're 27. Like you could easily find someone and you see it
all the time in the news where someone does something and they're like, well, I didn't think that this would cause any harm, and it's a guy who put together 18 bottle rockets into one and then lit it inside of his bedroom and his mom's house, that kind of thing, like, and then burned the house down. It's like, I didn't think it would be a problem. It's like, where was you're 27 years old, where's your thought process there? But then there's the flip side of it. You have kids that are 12 years old and have better thought process than some adults. It depends on the upbringing. That's what you're talking about with Susanna. It's like her different upbringing, her childhood and everything like that, the trauma that she went through is different than what Eddie went through.
I'd say that, like, in a large way, when a brick hit her on the head was probably the end of her childhood in a lot of ways. Like, do you think she's still a child in a lot of ways beyond that point? And how old was she? She was like young. I want to
7, 6, something like that.
Early grade school age. So that's that's a time where it's like her innocence was lost in a lot of ways because she was freaking bombed by Jack Mort. Like, I just think that, like, and that's the difference, and I think that's whatever. And so to see King putting that fine of a point on it is cool, because it's like that brings clarity to it, because that's kind of what I was perceiving, but I don't think I could have explained it in that good of a way to say it was literally like the last bits of his childhood being like killed. Like I couldn't have thought. I guess that's why King's a writer, and
that's why he's king.
Yeah, that's why he's Stephen King. But I love it though, because it's very telling and it's very revealing. So. And then next up here it says, I don't want your apology, least of all for being afraid, he said. Without fear, what would we be? Mad dogs with foam on our muzzles and shit drying on our hocks? What do you want then? Eddie cried. You've taken everything else, everything I have to give. No, not even that, because in the end I gave it to you. So what else do you want from me? Roland held the key, which was their half of Jake Chambers' salvation, locked in his fist, and said nothing. His eyes held Eddie's, and the sun shone in the green expanse of the plain and the blue-gray reach of the Send River, and somewhere in the distance a crow hailed again across the golden league of this faded summer afternoon. After a while, understanding began to dawn in Eddie's eyes, and Roland nodded. I have forgotten the face of my father. Eddie paused, dipped his head, swallowed, looked up at the gunslinger once more. The thing which had been dying among them and had moved on now. Roland knew it. The thing was gone, just like that. Here on the sunny, windswept ridge at the edge of everything, it had gone. It had gone forever. I had forgotten the face of my father, Gunslinger, and I cry your pardon. Roland opened his hand and gestured the small burden of the key to him, who Caw had decreed must carry it. Speak not so, Gunslinger, he said in the high speech. Your father sees you very well, loves you very well, and so do I. So, love that. Pretty good to kind of see that large kind of almost showdown that was happening earlier, to see it kind of resolved in this way.
Yeah.
The key is a big part of it here in terms of like references that a couple times. And then just I love the high speech stuff too. Like it really doesn't seem super different from what we're generally seeing with dialogue, but like, the fact that King's able to call it out that it's high speech, I don't know. How do you visualize that in your head?
I don't. It doesn't seem any different to me, so I've never really like thought about it as different.
Yeah, I think I just in my mind pictured that like Roland probably like carries his voice in a different way when he's speaking that way, like almost like someone that's just chit-chatting with her friend, but then they're like before Congress and talking, like they're probably going to have a different vocal intonation. Like that's probably what I picture. I almost feel like maybe even Roland stands up a little bit tall. Like I just feel like there's like a certain like lost like dignity and pride that normal Roland wouldn't have. Sergio Leone's Man with No Name, like you don't see a lot of royalty and like regal nature to him. He's just like this fucking badass on the edges of the world, like being a badass. But like I just think that like when it's a high speech and like when Roland whatever, I think there's almost like it's hard to explain, but I think in my mind it's like his voice sounds different, and it just he carries himself different, and suddenly he almost looks different. Like I think of like Lord of the Rings does that with
Gandalf.
No, Aragorn.
Oh.
There's a few times, I don't remember if it's portrayed in the movies as much, but in the books there's a few times where he like his nature shows through.
I think of
he no longer looks like the Ranger. There's times that like his kingliness shows through for small slivers.
Yeah.
And there's just a difference, an aura to him. And I think I've kind of put that on Roland a bit too.
The one I think about, what I'm talking about with Gandalf, is when he comes before the King of Rohan, Theoden, and he's he's all covered up and he's talking to him.
Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
and hits him, I
Yeah.
think of like that kind of thing is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what comes to my mind when you say someone, like in Lord of the Rings. It's like, like talking like
Yeah. But
differently. He's talking just a little bit and then he's like, all right, I'm gonna drop the hammer now. Then it's my wife calls it my dad voice.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Parents is a big thing that have that. They have their normal conversation voice, but if your kid gets out, that's where your dad voice comes out.
And we all have it, right? They're in different ways. Whether it's you're talking to your boss at work, whether you're talking to, like Congress. There's just different places, or a judge or something. There's just certain times that you would speak differently, I believe. Like in some way you hold your voice differently.
Police officer who's pulled you over.
And I think it's the same. I think that's what it is with Ron. That's how I've always perceived it. But yeah, it's kind of tough because when you actually look at the text, it doesn't actually look that differently. I believe we've kind of been told that it looks different. High speech is written differently, but in terms of what Stephen King's showing us, there's no difference there. So I don't know what would be beyond a different tone in Roland's voice, unless it was like suddenly he started talking in an English accent.
That's weird. No. I don't like that.
No,
that'd be weird. I really don't like that. That bothers me.
Like, so Idris Elba, just drops the American accent and has his real accent.
No.
Oh, man. I actually, just small tangent. I was watching this thing that somebody posted on Twitter, and it was just like literally interviewing English people like in England right after GoldenEye debuted. And they were interviewing these people, and a lot of them were talking about like all this new James Bond and stuff because it was Pierce Brosnan's first one and stuff and like whatever. And literally the last one they interview, it was Idris Elba.
Oh,
just
really?
Random civilian got interviewed by the news where he's, this Pierce Brosnan guy's, and it was just like I took a double take. I'm like, wait, that's Idris Elba. Then I looked, and I'm like, oh my God, it is him.
It's like, there's funny coincidences.
It's like 25 years earlier than it is now, but like, yeah.
Did you see the one with Tom Holland?
No.
There's one, I think it's on the Graham Norton show is where they did it. They talked about where he did a picture or a video when he was a kid in a Spider-Man costume.
Oh yeah. I do remember.
So badass.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember him posting that when he first got announced. But
Yeah.
there's that. And there's like Aaron Paul was on The Price is Right and stuff. So
Yeah.
there's things like that. But yeah, I got to at least mention that because Idris came up. So moving on to subchapter 16. Now that this is resolved here. So what do you got here in number 16?
So we're back with Jake. He's walking along Castle Avenue. Up ahead, a police car turned onto the avenue. Jake at once became extremely interested in a display of gardening supplies in the window of a hardware store. He watched the reflection of the blue and white pass in the window and didn't move until it was gone. Hey, Jake, old buddy, where exactly are you going? He hadn't the slightest idea. And that's what goes back to your point that you made a little bit ago. Maybe it would have been better to hide out in plain sight in Brooklyn instead of in Times Square.
Yeah.
They're used to kids cutting and they don't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe, but again, there's no way for him to know that. Like,
no, it's true. He's not from Brooklyn. He doesn't know the area.
Well, also we're adults looking at like the overall picture. He's a 11-year-old kid in the middle of all this. Like,
that's true.
It's easier for us to take the higher view, and we've had more experiences to where it's just like you'd be less noticed there. But like, he's a kid. What does he know? And he's from like this prep school and stuff. So. And then a little bit further down here, it says he's basically seen a bunch of graffiti. There's some names and stuff, but it says, but a few mottos and words to the wise have been dropped in here and there. And Jake's fixed on two of these. The first one, it says, "A rose is a rose is a rose," had been written across the bricks in spray paint, which had been weathered to the same dusky pink shade of rose which grew in the vacant lot where Tom and Jerry's Artistic Deli had once stood. Below it, in a blue so dark that it was almost black, someone had spray painted this oddity: "I cry your pardon." So definitely some fun little things there. Of course, the rose, I think that's something that Jake would connect to. "Cry your pardon," though, I don't think that that's something he's even heard, because I don't think Roland was really acting very apologetic to Jake.
Does Roland ever apologize?
No, I mean, unless he said, "I cry your pardon," as he let Jake fall,
Yeah.
I cry your pardon. What?
That's terrible. Hashtag Todd is terrible. That's the second one in this episode. Wow.
Made you wince there. That's always a good one.
Wow.
It's always good when I can make you wince.
Jeez.
Oh, and then it goes on and says, "What does that mean?" Jake wondered. He didn't know. Something from the Bible, maybe. But it held like the eye of a snake is repeated to hold a bird. So, I just thought those are fun little things there. Of course, we understand a little bit more of what's going on. But overall, I mean, even the last time when he was in the vacant lot, there was some graffiti that was very interesting. So far, the graffiti has been on point in this series. Okay, so then what do you got next here in 16?
So Jake bumps into a man, and the man gets all defensive with him.
An old man.
Old man, very old man. Asks him why he's not in school, says it's finals week and everything. And then he asks him about Marquee Academy. And the man doesn't answer, and so Jake starts to walk away. And the man calls to him. "There is no Marquee Academy down here," the old man said. 22 years I'm living here, so I should know. Marquee Avenue, yes, but no Marquee Academy. Jake's stomach cramped with sudden excitement. He took a step back toward the old man, who had once raised his cane into defensive position again. Jake stopped at once, leaving a 20-foot safety zone between them. Crazy old coot. "Where's Marquee Avenue, sir? Can you tell me that?" "Of course." It's Gorse. Gorse instead of course.
Yeah.
"Of course," the old man said. "Didn't it say I'm living with a K instead of a G?
Yeah.
Here 22 years. 2 blogs down instead of blocks. 2 blogs down. Turn left at the Majestic Theater."
Blogs. That's a word that's way more relevant today than it would have been in 1991 when this is posted. Blogs is actually a word now.
That is.
That's actually a real thing. And now, like here, he's just using it to show the guys like vocal patterns.
"I'm telling you now, there is no Marquee Academy." And Academy, I have to say this. I don't know how to say it in the accent that King's trying to. Akidimy.
I just picture like
Academy.
I think it's just like I picture the voice of like Chekhov from Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's.
I can't.
That's what I'm picturing here from this guy.
I can do Soviet, but I can't do Academy. Academy is Academy. Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's where my note ends, is Jake saying thank you.
So kind of gets a little bit of a help here. He's using the Marquee Academy as his excuse, and the old man doesn't, it says there's no such thing as Marquee Academy, but there is a Marquee Avenue. So now Jake has something to follow.
He has a clue.
Yeah.
Aha, Sherlock.
Exactly. He's got something to go off
It's
of here.
elementary, my dear Watson.
Indeed. So then moving down to subchapter 17, and this will be where we close out. What do you got for 17 here? This is a short one.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start off this one. Back to Roland. Roland's band stopped at dusk. The gunslinger dug a shallow pit and lit a fire. They didn't need it for cooking purposes, but they needed it nonetheless. Eddie needed it. If he was going to finish his carving, he would need light to work by. I just got to say, I've camped. Fires do not put off a lot of light like the movies make you think they do.
Yeah, there's not 200 and something watt bulbs that they put up to artificially show you the light of a fire.
Yeah.
Alan in the chat says Jewish accent maybe, and he says Yiddish, right? And yeah, I think Yiddish is what you're thinking.
I think it actually.
But the way that's reading though, I think it's like Eastern European is how I perceive that. But Alan, I think, or let's see, I'm sorry, Alan and Cody both chimed in there on that one. That was my first impression as well. But some of those things really feel to me more Russian or Eastern European. But I remember like Jewish or Yiddish was actually my first thought when I read this. But I think the more, especially with Peter reading it there, and I think I'm seeing that. I think it may be a little bit more Eastern European,
which could still be Yiddish. I mean, that's heavy in that area, in that region. So
definitely interesting though, and it's always fun to listen. That'd be a fun one to listen to Frank and see how he reads it. That might give us some clue, but it's always fun to try to discern it through writing in terms of how that works. Like, I'm okay with this, the stuttering, like It drives me fucking crazy, dude. That absolutely drives me crazy. Yes, but could be. I was actually thinking maybe Jewish or Yiddish the first time reading it through, but now I'm leaning more towards like maybe more like Peter said, Soviet, because this would be indeed the height of the Soviet Empire. So
that's true.
It would be Soviet. And then then going down here, it says, "Where is he?" He asked. Down the road a piece. You leave him, or because Roland's looking around, Susanna's there, Eddie's not. He says, "Where is he?" He asked. Down the road a piece. You leave him alone now, Roland. You've done enough. Roland nodded, bent over the fire pit, struck a piece of flint with a worn steel bar. Soon the kindling he had gathered was blazing. He added small sticks one by one and waited for Eddie to return. So kind of a spot to stop there for this. Like I said, we're going to cover our spoiler section here in just a second. But yeah, I like this because it shows that there's still some tension, especially on Susanna's side, because I feel like there was kind of that unspoken like moving on for Eddie of kind of whatever with that last bit where the showdown ended before we moved back to Jake. But it does seem like Susanna still has a little bit of attitude towards Roland here because of that, which makes total sense.
Defensive of her man.
Yeah, so I do like that because it shows that there is still some I don't know, what would you call it, like friction?
Animosity.
Yeah, friction, animosity. He's definitely not feeling all lovey-dovey yet. So that is where we're going to close out for this section. If you are not finished with the series yet, you can go ahead and close out this episode and join us on the next one, and we'll be back. If you have finished the series, though, we're going to move into our spoiler section. So, big spoiler warning. We are now going to discuss this last section that we've covered in the context of the whole series. So, once again, this is your last chance. If you haven't finished reading the last word of the 7th book, turn the podcast off now. Because it is no longer going to be safe for you for this last little bit here. So if that is you, we will see you next time and sign off with Long Days and Pleasant Nights.
Long Days and Pleasant Nights.
But now if you're still with us, spoilers lie ahead. So, like I said, this is going to be new, and I think this might kind of evolve as this is the first time we're doing this. But yeah, I brought up the slides, I wanted to note, because I brought up those Thomas Hart Benton pictures I looked at, couldn't find something that was exactly what King had described, but it's certain that this, along with a number of things that we passed so far in this book, that Blaine is being referred to quite a bit. And the thing is, reading it though, I wasn't even sure where this fit, if this was in the spoiler section or not, because it's like Blaine, but it's like ultimately, like when you or I read this, we had a train on the cover, so it was kind of hard to not understand that like some train was coming. We didn't know the full context of it, but like this whole story has just constantly dropped trains in. You have Charlie the Choo Choo, there's different things, and then obviously now we've got these paintings here. He calls out the Old West paintings, but you don't really get any descriptions of what those paintings are. But with this guy, Thomas Hart Benton, it describes a train going across a plain with some farmers looking on or whatever. But I just wanted to obviously point out that this, along with some stuff we've read so far, is pretty big. I don't know, King's I don't even want to say it's like a vague, like whatever hint. Like he knows full well where it's going most likely, and is dropping us some hints that's going to lead up to Blaine, which is of course one of the more popular elements of the series. I think when we've talked about our top 5 moments of the series, I don't even know if we've actually fully listed that out, but I think both of us have said we guarantee within the top 1 or 2 is probably going to be the whole Blaine thing. Yeah, it's one of the greatest moments. So, it looks like some lobstrosities in the chat there, just for you, Peter. I wanted to just point out obviously that, and also the one other thing in this section though is the key used on the cop. I've always had that incorrect in my head that was the turtle.
In books 6 or 7.
Yeah, the little
scrimshot. Turtle.
Yeah, I could never think of that word. But that just was in my head. So every fucking time I get to this section and read, I'm just like, wait, no, this is like the turtle. Like, he uses the key. I'm like, wait, what? Oh yeah. Like it just, those cross in my mind. And I just, the scrimshot turtle, that's what I think of when I think of like basically overriding people's minds and kind of controlling them a bit, is that. So,
the Sholpada.
So for it to be the key here, it throws me off every fucking time. But still really cool. And they are very similar. I think that's a good little parallel to look at is, ultimately that later on in the series, we're going to have something very similar with that turtle. And then Cody giving us not only some lobstrosity stuff, but in emoji form.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I'm trying to see if there's a way that I can ban you.
And Cody is that the 2 fingers up? Is that just like the fingers that are going to go missing there?
Oh,
oh, too soon.
You guys are jerks.
And then the other thing I had to bring up was this line from Roland here, this internal monologue where he says, "Something else I've done in the name of my tower, my score grows ever longer, and the day when it will have to be totted up like a longtime drunkard's bill at an alehouse draws ever nearer. How will I ever repay?" And like that's a big fucking line, man. And this is King writing in 1991. Like, if we believe King 100%, King doesn't know what the ending of this series is. So
it makes you wonder if there was going to be some like reckoning that he was. I had an
idea of, because this feels very like. This feels like something that you would have read in book 5 or 6 when he knew the ending already, because he was writing those 3 books at the same time. So to read this here in book 3, like that's crazy to me to see, because honestly, like that is like literally how I've always perceived Roland's damnation is, basically kind of a debt that is incurred by the way that he lives and the people that he wrongs and stuff. So it says something else I've done in the name of my tower, my score grows ever longer. Like literally that's how I've always perceived it. And like him moving the scales a bit to kind of balance some of this stuff out by maybe for like being ready to forsake the tower, that kind of stuff. That's how he's going to get his redemption. So to see King writing that now is crazy to me. And I honestly don't know if I've ever caught on to that until doing this. Because again, it's so easy just to breeze past this shit. But when we're actually doing it for these book clubs, like we actually stop and think about it and stuff. I was like, holy shit, dude. And like, because this is like, what, 10 something years before he's actually going to write these final books. Like
longer than that, isn't it?
1991 to the early 2000s.
2004? right?
Well, that was when that book was published.
Oh,
But he
that's
got
when it
hit.
was
He got
published.
hit in '99, and pretty much after he recovered. So you would say 2000-ish. Like he put everything else aside and wrote the Three Dark Tower book. So he probably wrote this damn near 10 years later. He wrote the actual finale to it also. Yeah, but it makes me wonder because there's like the whole thing right that he allegedly had like the whole outline that was lost on his motorcycle or whatever. They had the whole outline written out, or like a basic outline written out. And it makes me wonder like how much of that outline was there. And like you said, maybe there's just an element of like Roland paying his debt in some way or whatever.
That's what I think of it with this line and what you're talking about, with which could potentially be what King's thinking of.
Yeah,
That okay? The bill comes due.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
not necessarily that it's going to be like a loop or anything. Like, I don't
No.
know. Maybe he didn't have that in perspective, but that in some way that the tower would be his reckoning, and that there would be a bill due. Because that's a very very provocative line. And if I found that in book 6, I'd be like, oh yeah, cool, because he wrote that because he knew full well how it was going to end. But,
Exactly.
like, to read it in 91, it's like, okay, if we believe him that he didn't know how it was going to end, like that is a fucking killer line.
That's
man.
a hell of a line.
Yeah, that's a hell of a little thing
Yeah.
there to say, and a perfect synopsis. Like, man, if I was going to take a textual thing to explain how I've always perceived the whole thing, I would take that line right there because that's a good one, man. Yeah, and then Cody's giving you the
Skolpada.
Scandinavian.
Yeah.
And Alan says it says that Roland has had his eye on the boiler for a while. He knows it's destructive.
Good reference to The Shining there.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's cool too. I do love that at least Roland is self-aware too. Like he understands that he doesn't know how or why or not why. He doesn't know how, but he does understand that there's potentially a debt that he's incurring with all this shit that he's done. That's a I don't know, being self-aware in a way that maybe we haven't seen from Roland up to this point. We've seen him do some pretty horrific shit, and we'll still see him do some horrific shit, but like we've seen most of the worst of it already, of what Roland's done. So the fact that he's self-aware of it is kind of cool. I think that's
Also,
it tells us a lot about him as a character internally that we haven't seen yet. So that's kind of a cool little tip for what we're going to see later.
Yeah. Also, is it the first time that Roland ever has a self? I don't want to say self-doubt, but a moment where it's not. Before book 2, it's all for the sake of the tower, for the sake of the tower, for the sake of the tower. And we see that later on. It's anything for the tower. But this one is
it's more introspective, almost.
More more so where it's oh fuck, man, look how much shit I'm having to do to get here. That kind of feeling for Roland. That's not normally how he's portrayed.
No,
I think this is the first time you get that. He gets it later on, very heavy in book 5, very heavy in book 6, where it's all the shit I've had to do, all the shit I still got to do, to get there. I'm not done. I'm still going, but I'm gonna heavy heart going forward, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that he kind of like wears his heart on his sleeve there. But the one note that I had, I wanted to ask you about this. What were your thoughts coming up to? I mean, we know this is going to be Lud. What were your thoughts coming up to Lud? Like, what were you expecting? What were you thinking about? At this point,
Yeah, at this point, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know that I really had a lot of expectation just because it's King, and it's almost not like I am almost in the perspective of like don't hold your hopes up. Like I'm not in the realm of like Eddie where I think it's going to be this like kumbaya thing, but like I don't know. Like, is it going to be like
I knew it was going to be bad.
I almost maybe perceived it being like Captain Trips New York in terms of like there's just nothing there. It's just fucking wiped out and
It's
like
just deserted
and almost desert. Yeah, just like not that I was expecting to be actually Captain Trips, but like post-apocalyptic. The city's still standing, but it's like
zombie apocalypse without the zombies.
Yeah,
everyone's dead and gone.
Yeah, like what's the stupid Will Smith movie where like there's no
I Am Legend.
Yeah, like there's all this stuff. Sorry, I'm not a Will Smith fan. I'm not trying to talk shit on the movie.
It's actually one of his better movies.
But like that, like I just maybe, and I don't even know if I was full on expecting that. I just think that maybe that was probably more in my head. And maybe it's even more just seeing what Eddie's expecting. Like, no, it's not going to be it, man. It's not going to be.
No,
it's not going to be what you think. And like,
it can never be that easy with King.
No, exactly.
That's where my mind went. I mean, I'd only read a few novels at this point of Stephen King, but at this point, it's just like, oh, this is going to be bad. How bad is it going to be?
Yeah, exactly.
Was my question.
yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I had a lot of expectation beyond it's not going to be anything good. It's not going to make life easier. And I don't think it's just going to be like fucking New York City. Oh, look, there's a stock exchange, and oh, there's the Central Park Zoo, and like
that was the one part of me that I questioned is like, is this going to be close enough to New York that they're going to recognize things like, oh my God, that's the bowl, and everything like that.
And I don't know if I don't know if I had those kind of thoughts yet. I don't think I was thinking a lot of stuff like Twinners and stuff yet. I think that comes.
When Susanna was talking about how much it reminded her of New York, that's where it pops into my head the first time I was reading.
Yeah,
it's like, oh shit, are we going to get this and that? But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Later on, they talk about, damn, does that not look like the George Washington Bridge?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like I probably didn't, mostly because like cool, she has some homesickness, but she doesn't sit there and go, oh look, there's the World Trade Center. Oh, there's the Empire State Building. Like she's not pointing out things. So like I think it reminds them of New York, but I don't think it was enough for me to think like, oh yes, we're going to see like. And again, because I think the Twinner stuff really gets heavier as we go a little bit. Like it isn't as heavy now as it will be later. So I don't think I was expecting that, but like I think it was maybe got closer, and like because there was the familiarity with the bridge or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, that's the point probably when I started thinking like, oh, okay, maybe we're actually going to be like, this is just a fucking multiverse version of New York City that's in this world. But that comes later for me personally. Now the other thing is so Co-op City. We've talked at length about what worlds and what levels of the tower everything's on, and we've obviously know that like King made a mistake in a lot of ways because Co-op City is in the Bronx, but he wrote it here in 1987 for book 2. Yeah. He wrote it in Brooklyn, and of course that's easy to just kind of what do you call it? Retcon it to being that, oh, it's because it's from a different world, which legit, like, I think that makes it a cooler story that it is a different whatever. But I guess if nothing else, it proves that Eddie and Jake are from not our America. They're from New York City, but it's not our world. Susanna, I don't know if we really have as much for her to know.
The only thing we really have is Macy's and JFK.
Yeah, and it's like,
I mean,
those both line up.
Aside from that,
and those both line up. Like, even some of the places she went down south, like all that shit lines up. So it's like I would need to see something more definitive to prove that she's not from our
her drinking Nozla or
there's exactly
Andrew driving a Tokoro.
Yeah,
not a Spirit because that wasn't around yet, but a Tokoro limousine or something.
Exactly. So in terms of checklist wise, it seems like if Eddie and Jake, I guess they would have to be from the same one then, because ultimately the dream's leading him there, but then he's actually going to follow a real Eddie. So it's like they're from the same one, and it's not ours. So I had to look that up because now as we're talking about Co-op City and stuff, I do find it interesting to kind of.
It's not Brooklyn. It's
the Bronx.
The Bronx
is where it's at, and where I just Googled it here. Co-op City is a cooperative housing development located in the northeast section of the borough of the Bronx. So yeah, that's that is actually a good ways off from
and there's no way and it's easy to be like excusing Jake. Oh, Jake got it wrong. Jake doesn't know Brooklyn. He's not from Brooklyn. He's from he's from uptown.
But Eddie
lives there. So there's no way that Eddie got that wrong, right?
Yeah. And especially because it says it's the northeast section of the Bronx, because the Bronx is further north. So it's like if it's the northeast part of that, it's a ways from Brooklyn. It's so that's had to at least bring that up because that shows us. I think we've pretty much we know for sure Eddie's not from our world, but now this proves that Jake's not from our world as well. So as we go through, we'll have to keep track of that kind of stuff, see if we find anything with Susanna. I think the only time we might find something is later on when they go and talk to her family in the later books. We'd have to
Moses Carver
be extra vigilant about what we see there and what may or may not prove what world that one is in. So.
Cody says Sköldpadda translates, it's Scandinavian, it translates directly from Swedish to English as shield toad.
So I'm wondering if Swedish are like the Germans then, where all their animals are just like the most literal fucking things. Like have you ever heard of that? Like
elephant is like long nose or something like that. Yeah.
Well, my favorite one is fucking raccoons. So in German, raccoon is literally wash bear. because
they wash their
because
food.
they wash their shit. Yeah, so it's just like I love those things. And yeah, so Swedish shield toad. That sounds very very much like what the German. And I only know it from some memes I've seen in terms of like the showing how the German language builds its words and stuff. Which
It's literally pronounced like it's wash bear. WACHBA with the 2 dots over it R. Washbar.
Yeah,
Washbar.
So it sounds like Swedish are the same way because shield toad. I don't think that the Germans is that far off when it comes to turtles. I think they're very much very clear about it being, it's just very descriptive. Like it's not just like this weird esoteric thing, or it's just like
Yeah,
whatever,
it's not even them like physically like visually describing the animal like where you take the German word and then you break it down and it's like, oh, that means long and that means nose, and you put it together and that's how you get elephant.
Yeah,
it's literally wash bear.
Yeah, just wash bears. So, and I think I'm almost
which is wrong. They are not wash bears. They are trash pandas.
I'll say the turtle ones is very similar, but yeah. So that's it for our spoiler section. As we go on, we're going to kind of go section by section, whether we have a spoiler section, because I think as we go through and do our research, there may be sections we just don't have anything to talk about, and with those ones we'll go a little bit longer to make sure we have the time. On these ones where we think we have some stuff to discuss, we're going to cut our reading a tiny bit short to leave some room for the spoiler section. But that'll be the newest evolution here of the book clubs, is adding that. So yes, that is the episode though. So let's go ahead and hit the outro stuff real quick. If you want to subscribe, rate, and review us, you can do that on any podcasting service. You can stream us on Spotify or Stitcher. You can find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. Again, there's no show notes for this episode because it's a book club. You can become a patron over at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know how to do that. One more thing before I hand it off to Peter, though, just remember the next 2 episodes are roundtables. So there's some news and stuff that's happened, obviously, through the King universe. We'll cover all that over the next 2 episodes.
And nothing that I know about.
Yeah, Peter's head in the
Like
sand.
always.
It's always fun.
That's why I don't follow anything on Twitter or Reddit or anything for Stephen King.
Yeah.
I almost did the other day.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you about that. I almost went and found the Dark Tower subreddit because I've never been on it because you talked to me about how toxic it got after the movie came out and everything.
It still has it on occasion.
But I've never... But then I remembered. I was like, oh, wait, nope. Head in the sand. But if you want to email us, it's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. And then our shows are on here on YouTube. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Again, remember to like, subscribe, ring the bell just to get notifications. Then our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then pick up your merch. Tad's pillow, my sticker.
I'm so happy to have it.
T-shirts, anything like that. You can get those at tpublic.com/user/darktowerpalaver. Or we also do have it on the website. It's the little shipping box.
Yep.
That
and
takes you directly there.
And you can get any of the products of either of the 2 designs. I mean, if you want to get a slanderous pillow that says Tad is terrible, which is, of course, not true.
Hey, hashtag Tad is terrible. Get it right.
Which isn't true.
It's your own merchandise.
Or you can go this route that isn't slandering me and get this,
Yeah.
The only thing I need to look at, I don't think I did it for a reason, but hats. I want to say when I was trying to set it up, there wasn't, like, I don't remember what it was. I'll check again and see if I can do that because I certainly...
Do they have hats on TeePublic?
I think so. Or maybe they don't. I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
I didn't think that they did. Huh.
If they do, I didn't select it for a reason, and I'll have to double check and see if I did that or if anything's changed. Because sometimes I've seen it too, where when I was doing some research on different places where they had hats, but the design area was so small that I was just like, I don't really like it. Like I wouldn't wear a hat like that because the logo's so damn small and stuff. So
speaking of TeePublic, everything is on sale 38% off.
Oh,
why 38%? I don't know, but that makes it so T-shirts are $13 plus shipping.
And that's why I did my cushion. It was Labor Day or something.
$2 for the sticker when I got it.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead and check all that stuff out, and then we will be back in a fortnight for Roundtable. I forget what number, 111 maybe.
This is so blasphemy. The Dark Tower shirt is $13. The hashtag Tad is terrible shirt is $14. Steering people away from the good shirt. That's messed up.
They I don't know. They do the pricing. I don't even touch that.
No, it's not you. It's like I said, it's no no hats. There are mugs, masks, wall art, notebook, pillow, tote, tap. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
yeah.
go through all that.
So yeah, we'll see you guys in a fortnight for a roundtable. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will see you guys then on the podcast side. We will sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
And now that we're closed out on that, thank you guys all that joined us here in the chat. It's always fun to have you guys. I know there's usually a little bit less conversation on book clubs, and I also did lose track of the chat at one point today. Apologize about that. But yeah, you guys are always awesome. It's always fun to have you guys chatting along. You know, sometimes we lose things in our mind and we can't pull up a word or a name or something. You guys do. Like the...
Shulpada.
Yeah. The little turtle thing that... is just as hypnotic as Jake's key. So that'd be a handy thing to have, man. That's all I'm saying. There's a couple things in Dark Tower that would be really fun to have, and that would be an interesting one. You know, it's like, oh, boss, like, why are you like 2 hours late because you slept in? It's like, I wasn't 2 hours late. I'm right on time. You told me to come in later today.
I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so we will see you guys in a fortnight. Keep an eye out on the notifications. I'll blast it out on social media and stuff as well. I usually do. I almost never forget that anymore. But yeah, we will see you guys in a couple weeks.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.